My romantic cabin getaway with my fiance isn't exactly going as planned. By the cold people. Make sure you go check out his Facebook link at facebook.com/Felix Blackwell Books. That'll be linked in the description as well. I'm going to include the interview and the video that Felix talks about in the story at the end. So if you want to see that, skip ahead to the very end. My fiance and I are from California, but her family lives in Colorado, and they own a cabin near Pikes Peak, way up in the mountains. After visiting them, they recommended that we go stay in the cabin a few days. We are avid hikers and jumped at the opportunity. Colorado is very rich in Native American folk legend. Virtually every place you go to used to belong to an indigenous community, and a few of them who remain keep their traditions and stories alive. Pikes Peak is no different. There are enough stories, and gift shops, to give anyone a sense that the land itself is alive. I don't know if this has anything to do with what's happening, but maybe someone here is from Colorado and can help connect the dots. Faye and I are currently at the cabin. It's day 4 and we're planning on leaving today, but things have gotten very strange around here, and it looks like we're going to be here a while longer. We have enough food for the winter, and the heater is in stellar order, but the Wi-Fi is just terrible at best, and there's virtually no cell phone reception out here. We feel isolated. I'll try to respond to the comments, but the internet dips out for hours at a time up here. The first weird thing that happened was the snow. There was no snow in the forecast, so we packed light, but on our first night here, just our luck, a blizzard pounded the whole area. My little Corolla is basically just a brick of ice outside. There's no way I'm going to make it the 6-mile drive down the mountain to town. I should just blame myself for trusting Colorado in spring. After a day, Thursday, of lovely hiking and sightseeing, some really unsettling stuff started happening. When we returned to the cabin just before dusk, we found an enormous dream catcher dangling from a tree about a dozen yards from the back door. This wasn't the kind that you're imagining, the kind you buy from a novelty shop. This thing was made from twigs and twine, and it was about 3 feet in diameter. Absolutely humongous. Neither Faye nor I were stupid enough to touch it. We're veteran horror movie fans, and we know that's how you get cursed. If the snow melts a bit, I'll get back out there and snap a picture and post it here. That night, while we were eating dinner, we heard a bunch of noises in the woods outside. Twigs crunching, leaves rustling, etc. This wasn't unusual because we saw elk and deer on our hike, but the sounds were slow and purposeful. They stopped and started, and they were rhythmic, like someone was casing the area in a crescent shape around the cabin. I used my really bright tactical flashlight and looked outside off the porch, but there was nothing. We stayed in all day on Friday, just cuddled, hung out, played some of the board games that we brought, and some of the Super Nintendo games they had in the cabin. Donkey Kong Country 2, I have considered stealing, because it's the greatest game ever made. It snowed again, and after dark we started hearing more noises. Around 1 a.m., Faye woke me up. She told me that she was hearing voices outside. I strained to listen, and I thought I could make out the sound of a man crying, very far away. But his voice was drowned out by the wind, so I wasn't absolutely sure of what I heard, so we went back to sleep again. But around 4:45 a.m., we heard him distinctly and closer. It sounded like he was calling for help, but he would dip into another language that I've never heard before. We called the ranger station at the bottom of the hill using my cell phone, and they told us that they would get up there to check it out. We never saw him, and I doubt they ever came. On Saturday, shit got real scary. It snowed again in the morning, and I stopped getting service for most of the day. Faye and I watched movies and tried to Skype with her family, but that didn't work. She went to sleep pretty early, around 8, while I did some photo editing on my laptop in the living room. She woke up crying hysterically. When I asked her what was wrong, she said she had a dream that she was lost in the woods outside, and that something was following her. I cuddled her until she fell back asleep, and eventually I drifted off too. Faye woke me up around 1 a.m. She was absolutely beside herself. I've never seen her so afraid in my life, and just the look on her face is what really unsettled me. She told me that she heard the man outside, but this time she recognized the voice. She was absolutely convinced it was her grandfather's voice, and he was wandering around outside begging for help. Faye's grandpa died when we were seniors in college 4 years ago. I told her that she was dreaming, but then I heard the voice too. I never met the guy, so I wouldn't recognize his voice, but it was different from the night before. It sounded older. I had to do everything I could to keep her from running off into the woods and looking for him. Eventually, she realized that the possibility of it being him was absurd, so we put a movie on at a good volume and fell back asleep. My cell phone wouldn't connect a single call. What happened last night, Sunday, was the thing that really sent me over the edge. Essentially, the same thing happened around 1 a.m., at which point I was still awake, almost expecting the noise to happen. I heard a voice. This time it was a woman's. Thankfully, it was distant enough not to wake Faye. I walked into the bedroom and cracked the window just a tiny bit. The frosty air that came through the crack seemed like a death sentence to me. As a Californian, nobody could survive outside for that long, not without serious military-grade winter gear. And yet, someone was wandering the fuck around out there, stepping on twigs and crying. I am a reasonable, skeptical, sometimes arrogant agnost, but I'm telling you, the voice sounded exactly like my mother's. My mom is alive and well and living in Southern California, so my brain instantly cramped at the sound of her voice out here in the Rocky Mountains. I would know my mother's voice anywhere. I think we all would. And I'm telling you, I'm about 90% sure it was hers, which is way too sure not to scare the shit out of me. I grabbed my light and went outside with a blanket wrapped around me and my hiking boots. I circled the entire cabin and looked around. There was snow pushed out of the way in a big, meandering pattern that snaked in and out of the tree line, like someone was drunkenly shuffling around. Maybe they were injured. The path went right up to the bathroom window, then back into the woods. Each time the voice called out, I shouted, "Mom," or "Who's there?" or "Who are you?" Each time the voice receded further into the woods. I'm pretty certain that it was trying to coax me deeper and deeper into the forest, away from the cabin. I'm still alive because I'm not an idiot. I'm not gonna die like some dumbass in a bad horror movie. So I went back inside and made sure we were locked down tight. Since I can't call the ranger station, I'm posting this instead. I'll keep you updated. Edit. It's Monday, and we got a hold of Faye's dad. The weather is supposed to clear up tomorrow, so he's going to come pick us up in his truck and help me get my car down the mountain. I'll keep you all informed. Only one more night in this place. I'll try to get some photos up. Edit. 9:30 p.m. Monday. I've been able to get online twice today, and I wish I knew more about electronics, but I'm a history teacher, so I don't think I can fix the Wi-Fi or predict when it'll work. I can send and receive emails and some Reddit posts, but I can't load some websites or view photos. Faye hasn't been feeling well since noon. She's developed a stomach ache and has been intermittently throwing up. We both ate the same thing and I feel fine, so I'm not sure what it is. She sometimes gets like this when she gets worked up. Although I am an agnostic atheist, she is very Catholic, and she's convinced something supernatural is going on. No need for alarm at the moment. She doesn't have a fever, and I'm keeping her hydrated and in high spirits. She seems to be on the mend, and she went to sleep about an hour and a half ago. I do have some noises to report, though. Crackling and repetitive vocalizations in the forest. Probably 100 yards out. The tree line starts about 20 yards out, so the sound is coming from much deeper. Some movement spotted just behind the tree line at dusk, but could be elk or deer, etc. Couldn't see very much, keeping all the curtains closed and windows locked and furniture in front of the front and back door, and I'm checking on Faye every half hour. Her dad will be here late morning to pick us up and dig my car out. Also, a Redditor near us pointed out that I'm an idiot for not double checking the weather. You're correct. I promise I'll provide a new post tomorrow, should anything significant happen. Sorry for the delay, everyone. We're collecting ourselves. Sorry for the formatting issues. I'm writing this on my phone. Faye's dad picked us up in his truck and he brought his buddy with him, who's now following us in my car. A lot of things happened last night. Some things I won't share because I'm not sure how to interpret them yet. I'm not even sure I understand what happened. But here are the most important things. I also managed to get some recordings, which I'll try to upload when I get home to California in a few days. I tried to stay awake last night until 1 a.m. because over the past few nights, that's the approximate time the noises change from rustling and branches to cracking to voices. I didn't make it. I fell asleep on the couch with my laptop open, waiting for the Wi-Fi to come back. I think that was at about 12:30 a.m. I woke up right around 1:15 to a muffled voice. In my sleepy days, I tried to figure out where it was coming from. I thought it was just outside the living room window, so I sat there quietly trying to make the words out. It was a woman's voice, saying things like, "A few days, it's not mine, I'm not alone, okay." I got up and peeked out the curtain but didn't see anyone. But then the voice said, "It's my parents' house," and I knew the voice was Faye's. As I mentioned earlier, my fiancé has an undiagnosed sleep disorder and has extensive sleep talking and sometimes sleepwalks. She's had pronounced night terrors since she was a little kid. I'll post a story on that someday. I walked into the bedroom to find Faye sleeping on her tummy as usual. She didn't say anything else as I came in. Two things really disturbed me about this situation, though. The first is that she appeared to be having a conversation with someone, which is actually quite common for her, but the person she was having a conversation with was interrogating her, asking her questions about herself, me, the cabin. Second, in her sleep, Faye was imitating another voice. It wasn't hers that she was speaking with. She was altering the pitch and tone to sound like a different person. My modus operandi is to not wake her up when she has sleep disturbances. There's a story behind this. Expect that one someday too. Instead, I gently rub her back in her hair, which calms her and puts her back into a restful sleep. I did this for a few minutes, but there was another noise, off in the distance outside. I got up and I walked to the window and listened, and I think this was the first time I really felt scared, that I felt like we were in real danger. It was a child singing in the dark. I couldn't really make out much of what they were saying, but I am certain it was a child, probably aged 6 to 8, trying to sing a song. The snow had abated for a while now, and the stars were notably bright, so I could see all the way to the rim of the forest, about 20-ish yards out. There was a figure standing there, past the first trees facing back to me, looking up at either the moon or the tops of the trees. It stood so still that I convinced myself it was a tree stump or something. In a few minutes, it was no longer visible. My skeptical nature compels me to be reasonable and say that my eyes were playing tricks on me. When I turned around, Faye was sitting straight up in bed, eyes closed. She does this a lot in her sleep. She craned her neck and said something like, "Don't let them in," or "Don't let them inside." She was still doing the weird voice, so I woke her up. Faye and I sat in the bedroom with the lights on, talking about what we should do. I tried to get online to send an email to her parents, but of course, it doesn't work when you need it. We agreed to stay in the same room and try to fall back asleep. At one point, I got up to get her some water. She hasn't vomited in several hours and was feeling a lot better. And out the kitchen window, I saw flashes of pale light. They weren't like flashes you'd see when someone walks through the woods with a flashlight. They were more like if someone had a lantern they could turn on and off slowly. I flicked on the porch light to the front and the side of the house, hoping that it would discourage anyone from trying to approach. But as I walked back to the bedroom, I saw the distinct outline of a person through the window curtain in the living room. They were pressed against the glass with their hands on it, trying to peer inside. Since it was dark in the living room and brightish outside, I could clearly see their silhouette. I shouted and approached the window, but the person ran off before I could pull the curtain open. Faye slept soundly, but I continued to hear voices outside. Different ones, on and off all night until dawn. I wrote several of them down, but I couldn't sleep, so I camped out in the living room. I kept the bedroom door open so I could hear Faye if she started talking again. The voices would go away for hours and then just start back up again. At one point, I fell asleep, but I was woken up again by the sound of a light switching on and off again. From the couch, I could see the light from outside, going on and off in patterns of 5. I can't explain why this disturbed me so much, but it did. I imagined some kind of horrible creature standing in my house somewhere, flipping the switch up and down and smiling. My first instinct was to check on Faye, and I nearly had a heart attack when I saw she wasn't in bed. I started calling her name, pacing around the house, looking out the windows to see if she was outside. When I looked out the kitchen window, there she was, sitting on the hood of my car about 30 feet into the driveway. Her back was to me. She was staring off into the forest. She was completely rigid, just the way she sits up in bed when she's asleep. Faye sleptwalk all over the house back home in California. I found her in the kitchen and in the downstairs hallway and in the living room, but she's never gone outside. I shouted her name from the kitchen, but the second I did, Faye jumped off my car and dashed into the woods at full sprint. She never even looked back at me. I started flipping out. I screamed her name over and over, and I grabbed my boots to go after her. But the second I pulled the front door open, Faye called out my name from behind. She was standing in the hall looking confused, asking me what's wrong. Apparently, she had been in the bathroom, and in my masculine crusade, I had forgotten to check there. I looked at my car and out into the forest, and honestly, the first thing that came to my mind was, "You clever motherfucker." Needless to say, we stayed up the remaining few hours until dawn, intermittently writing down the voices we heard, which faded away and became less frequent with the passage of time. I'll try to get the recordings up in a few days. For now, here's a list of the voices we heard. We recalled some of the voices from the previous nights for memory, but I figured you'd like to know what was being said throughout the duration of this lovely cabin experience. I will return to Colorado, but fuck Pikes Peak. The question marks indicate words that were pretty unclear. A man's voice, vaguely familiar, but I couldn't put a face to it. This has been over the past several nights.
Hello? Oh, God, look at it! Look! Hello? Don't. They see in the dark. I'm lost. I'm lost. Watch you. Whoa my. It's very dark. I can see those lights. I'll come down there. Don't smile. I see you.
Could have maybe been Goat Smile? A woman's voice sounded age 20-ish last night, gasping in horror, surprise over and over.
Lay it on the ground and burn it. Turn it. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Completely monotone, not melodic at all.
She talks in her sleep. She's talking to me now.
A child sounded about 6 to 8 years old, indeterminate sex, last night. Crying and whining, occasional laughter.
Oh, so me I do. Why do I do? Eat. I am a vacant, naked soul. Meow.
Singing, not sure if it was actually English or if my mind was just forcing the sounds into English.
When do we go inside?
This one had a very unusual intonation. Sounded like a robot trying to mimic a child. The voice of my mother, a few nights ago.
Stop.
Laughing and joking. I recognized the Bostonian accent.
Look at the windows. Did you see it?
The voice of Faye's grandfather, a few nights ago. Lots of indiscernible groaning and calls for help. Something about the war.
The bodies are still in the ground. They never found it, but they're there. Right here, right here. Oh, they found it. They found it. Ah, I'm standing in the same place 20 years.
By the way, I forgot to check to see if the Dreamcatcher was still out back. You're welcome to drive out there and look for yourself, though. So, that night, we sat down with Faye's mom, Laura, in her bedroom while her dad was watching the news downstairs. Her mom was upset by the stories we told her. I mean, she was visibly disturbed to the point of being in tears. She kept apologizing to Faye and hugging her. Laura told us that they purchased the cabin from their good friend, Jennifer, I think, who moved to Nevada about 20 years ago, and that Jennifer had her husband had complained about all sorts of weird experiences while living there. Her husband, Tom, like myself, was fond of hiking and exploring the woods, and collected tons of arrowheads and other neat trinkets he'd find out on the travels around Pikes Peak. But Jennifer started having dreams about Tom being dragged off into the woods from their bedroom. She had all kinds of horrific nightmares about him being skinned and pinned to the trees like some sort of macabre artwork. Jennifer said that while Tom was at work, she would occasionally hear the voice of her daughter, who died in childhood of some kind of bone cancer, calling Mommy from the edge of the forest. Jennifer's doctor claimed it was a medication she was on, and changed her meds. Tom got a new job in Vegas and they basically noped out of there. On a lighter note, Tom hung himself in the garage 2 years after they moved. No note or anything. Anyway, Laura, Faye's mom, and Greg, Faye's dad, only used the cabin to get away in the summer. Laura never experienced anything beyond weird feelings while she was there. She choked up at all the crazy stories Jennifer had told her. Greg, however, who suffers from PTSD nightmares occasionally, experienced exacerbated sleep disturbances in the cabin. Over the years, he became reluctant to go up there, and he claimed all the things he'd seen in Vietnam came back to him when he slept there. Allegedly, some of the people he saw get killed would come back and talk to him in his dreams at the cabin. The last time he stayed there, he woke up in a dream to find a few of them sitting in the bedroom with him, maimed and rotted. He privately mentioned to Laura that he also heard their voices in the forest, crying, begging, screaming for their mothers, etc. Oh, and guess what time he always heard them? Laura told us she honestly didn't believe that there was anything wrong with the cabin. Faye was extremely pissed off and let her have it. They kind of ended our visit on a bad note. Later that night, I was up reading, and Faye was sleeping next to me. She always falls asleep before me. That girl could fall asleep on a pile of rocks. She started mumbling in her sleep, so I listened carefully, and here are a few things I heard her say. Never, never, ever. No, I wouldn't. On the mountain. I can't. Why his name? We don't know you. No, it's Felix. That's my name. About 2 hours later, she woke me up by nudging me in her sleep, saying, "Tell the man in the hallway to leave." This sent me over the edge, so I got to go to the bathroom and to get some water. I didn't find anything strange, but I had a very hard time falling asleep though. This morning we heard back from the guy who went up to the cabin to check for gas leaks or carbon monoxide, at the behest of a few scrupulous Redditors. The guy mentioned that radon is a big problem in some of these old places in the mountains. He's some kind of super badass handyman with all kinds of equipment. So he wrangled up one of the Peak Rangers and they went up to the place together. Apparently, there were tracks all around the house, dozens of pairs of them, like a large group of people had been wandering around looking in the windows. All of the windows and doors had been sealed the way we left them. When they got inside, some stuff was moved around. The silverware drawer was emptied onto the kitchen floor and turned upside down. The power was completely dead. But the weirdest thing was that there was water all over the bed and floor, but our guy checked for leaks in the ceiling and the bathroom pipes. Nothing. Nothing had been stolen from the house, not even food. Some of the old clothes in the closet were strewn on the ground, but nothing stolen. Like maybe someone was trying them on, or smelling them. The ranger said that there were legends about the mountain. Something about things that sort of act like people, but they came out of an old abandoned mine. Greg's friend couldn't remember the name the ranger gave them. It was in a native language. I asked Greg about the ranger, about the sounds I heard. Specifically, the wachu wachu womai womai. And he said that it's a widely recognizable chant, but he doesn't know what it means. Anyone here have an idea? No radon, no carbon monoxide, no gas. The place is all electric. He checked for mold, but said it was unlikely that there would be any all the way up there. He did say it's possible that it's some kind of electrical problem, and that this can sometimes make people feel very unsettled, and maybe even have hallucinations. He has some kind of Geiger counter or gadget that detects issues like this, but it was broken when he tried to use it. I'm going to keep a close eye on Faye. She's still shaken up about all this. If there's anything left to report, I'll let you know. Hi everyone, just wanted to make a quick update. As promised, because Faye and I are flying back to California shortly. Faye is back to normal and feeling great. I watched her eat a huge plate of chicken parmesan yesterday. The first thing I should mention is that Faye's father was very reluctant to talk about the cabin or the weird experiences he's had there. He keeps trying to change the subject, and generally he's in a bad mood, which is pretty normal for him. He's a grumpy, grumbly old Vietnam veteran and was in the army since he's young. His personality is exactly what you'd imagine it to be. Faye asked him bluntly, "Is there something wrong with the cabin? Why would you let us go up there in the first place?" His response was just, "Talk to your mother." Update. We've begun hearing voices outside of our home. Faye is really upset and feels that I might have exacerbated these strange circumstances by giving them widespread exposure online. I'm going to go dark for a few days and see if that helps. Don't worry about us. We have a few close friends looking out for us. They know the entire story too. Over the weekend, my fiancée and I stayed in her parents' cabin in Pikes Peak, Colorado. I made a no-sleep post about the disturbing events that transpired over the course of the few nights. Many people have messaged me asking for an update, but I stopped responding because things have gotten worse since we returned home to California. I feel it's time that I say what's going on here. I'm sorry that this is so long, but I wanted to document everything. Faye and I flew back from Colorado on Wednesday afternoon. She slept the entire flight despite the noise, which amazed me. I can't sleep on planes. I'm absolutely terrified of flying. I'd rather stay another night in the cabin. When we got home, I ordered a pizza and she wolfed it down. Her appetite has returned in full force, which is great news. I mentioned this in my original post, but Faye has an undiagnosed sleeping disorder. She has pronounced night terrors, sleep talking, and the occasional sleepwalking. The disorder lies dormant 90% of the time, but it tends to flare up if she's under a lot of stress, like if we're moving, if she's changing jobs, or if a relative dies. I can expect a horrifying night of talking and odd behavior. Needless to say that our experience in the cabin has set Faye on edge. Although she's in high spirits, she's still afraid at night. I am too. That night, after the pizza, she fell asleep on the couch while we watched Wedding Crashers. At around 10 o'clock p.m., the movie ended, and I turned off the TV. As I brought our plates to the kitchen, I passed the stairwell. I heard a faint noise upstairs that sounded like a man sighing. I shrugged it off and woke Faye up. We brushed our teeth and then went to bed. Faye talked in her sleep a lot that night. It started around 1 a.m. I woke up to her calling out, "What did you do?" and "Do you need help?" and laughing. This isn't really unusual for her. She babbled occasionally and said a few funny things. I woke up again around 4 and heard her talking, but this time she was doing something she's never done before. We've been together for almost 5 years, and not once has she ever whispered in her sleep. But now, she was whispering with her back turned to me. For a second, I thought someone was lying on the floor at the edge of the bed talking back to her. This disturbed the shit out of me, so I sat up and leaned over her, trying to listen in the dark. The only thing that I heard her say discernibly was, "Shh." I asked her, "Faye, what are you talking about?" And she didn't reply. I said, "Who are you talking to?" And she replied with a "don't," and nudged me. Another unusual thing happened about 5:45 a.m. I woke up to Faye getting back into bed. She hurried into the bedroom from the hall and got back into bed quickly, making zero attempt not to wake me. First of all, Faye does not get up. Ever. She sleeps like a dead horse. Even if she went to the bathroom in the middle of the night, which she never does, the bathroom is not down the hall. It's in our bedroom. I asked her what she was doing the next morning, and then she claimed she had no memory of it. I spent all day Thursday thinking about why Faye was acting weird. I was the one who found the dream catcher and got close to it. I was the one who interacted with the voices at the cabin. Then I remembered something. On our last night in Colorado, at her parents' house, Faye got back into bed around the same time. 5:45 a.m. I barely remembered because I was half asleep, but the image returned to my head. She'd been getting up really early for a few days. So last night, I set my phone's alarm to vibrate. I put it on a time, 4:45 a.m. In the middle of the night, Faye started talking again. This time, she was doing the same thing she did at the cabin, changing her voice to sound like someone else. In 5 years, she sleep-talked a bunch, but has never whispered or changed her voice until recently. She said a few things which I try to commit to memory. La, la, la. Flat, monotone. Shh, ah. Like a sharp exhale, followed by a day on or a tay all, over and over. He's still in the trees. Where were you? I looked for you. And, oh, it's time. At about the same time, I heard a noise outside. It sounded like an old man grumbling to himself about something. We live in NorCal, and it's a really woodsy town, so when you look out the window, there are a ton of trees across the street. But it was very dark, and I'm fairly certain I saw a man walking behind the first line of trees. He was too far away to be the one grumbling, but it was very unusual to see someone over there this time of night. In fact, I've never seen someone over there at night. Ever. Looking outside required me to open up the curtains, which filled our room with moonlight. When I looked back at the bed, Faye was lying there with her neck craned towards me. Her eyes were crazy wide fixed on me, and her mouth was open. She issued a really frightening, gnarly, drawn-out groan, and flicked her tongue around. It looked like an epileptic fit in slow motion. Faye has definitely opened up her eyes in her sleep, but never like this. She looked like a fucking murderer. I got so scared and I called her name really loudly and woke her up. She was confused and asked me why I was at the window. I lied and said I was closing it because it was cold. I didn't want her to know I heard a voice. We talked a bit, but I'll skip that because this is getting long. My alarm woke me up at 4:45, and I lay there awake, waiting for Faye to get up like she'd been doing for the past few nights. She breathes very rhythmically when she's asleep, so I can always tell how deep she's under. At about 5:20, she sat straight up, swung her legs out of bed, and tiptoed down the hall. I followed behind. When I say my fiancé tiptoed, I don't mean like a child on Christmas Eve. This was robotic, alien, inhuman. She looked like a meth-addicted ballerina zombie going down the hallway, and she stopped at the stairwell. Her breathing never changed. I stood there in our bedroom poking my head out into the dark hall. Faye looked down the stairs, still standing rigidly on the balls of her feet, swaying to and fro slightly. She did some weird shit. She touched her face slowly for several minutes, touched the banister, touched the wall, flicked the light on and off a few times, all while maintaining her perfectly regular coma breathing. Then she reached out an arm in the motion of a bicep curl, stretching her fingers and wiggling them, curling them, her hand, her neck, all the way back up to her face. I watched her do this motion for about 4 minutes. It looked like she was testing the limb, as if she'd never used it before. But then I realized she was communicating with someone on the first floor. She was making a come hither motion. With full confidence that Faye was sleepwalking, I walked down the hall and leaned over the half wall that overlooks the living room. It was totally dark down there. I couldn't see anything but the clock on the cable box. And Faye stood there, waving, smiling, and making gestures, then touching her face and gently pulling on her hair. I carefully ushered her back to bed and talked to her softly, trying not to actually wake her. She didn't resist, she never does, and then went back to sleep without another word. I have zero clue what the fuck is going on. I told her this morning what she did, and now we have a doctor's appointment for her today at 3 p.m. I took Faye to see her doctor yesterday. We hesitantly explained what was going on with her. I left out all the paranormal stuff because I didn't want to get put in a ward. She seemed really concerned about Faye. Ordered a blood test, gave her a physical, asked about her diet, drugs, medication, etc. Faye and I are both non-drinkers, non-drug users, and neither of us are on medication. She wants Faye to be evaluated by a psychiatrist next week. For now, she gave her a sedative at night and some anti-anxiety medication. She wants us to go get some fresh air and get out of the house, so we're going on a hike today. A Redditor named Pixie Dix brought up the possibility that the child's voice outside the cabin asking, "When do we go inside? When do we go inside?" might not have been referring to inside the cabin, but rather inside Faye. This really worries me because it corroborates some of the strange behavior she's been exhibiting in her sleep. I contacted the park ranger, who's been pretty sympathetic to our situation. He's going to get in touch with some of the members of his tribe and who have experience with spiritual guidance and medicine. He's convinced that Faye and I attracted the attention of one of the, quote, ones who won't come out of the mine, unquote. Lucky us. More on that later. Some Redditors have recommended that I test Faye to see if it's really her. So, yesterday evening, against my wallet's advice, I took her to our favorite steakhouse. I have only ordered one meal from there. Medium tri-tip, house macaroni and cheese, and a bottle of root beer. Faye only ever orders one meal there too. Barbecue chicken sandwich with mac and cheese and a salad with ranch dressing and a Coke. She drinks Coke only. Her blood is mostly Coca-Cola. Faye took a long time deciding what to order, and ended up ordering a fucking New York strip. I jokingly told her to order for me too, and she said, "I don't know what you want." She also ordered water instead of Coke. Usually we have arguments over how much Coke she drinks, and how I'm trying to get her to hydrate better and just drink water. This was really unsettling to me. At the end of the night, when we were walking back to my car, I kissed her temple and asked if she really liked it when I called her Noodle. She said of course. I've never called her Noodle in my entire life. Her nickname has always been Monkey Toes. Long story. When we got home, she cracked open a Coke and got on Facebook, which was completely normal for her. This really threw me off. One thing that's been on my mind lately is the song the little kid was singing outside the cabin. For those who don't know, in the middle of the night in the cabin in Colorado, we heard a child's voice coming out of the forest, singing an eerie song. I've been catching myself humming it almost every day. Oh, soul me, I do. I asked Faye if it meant anything to her. I sang it to her when we were sitting on the couch. After a few repetitions, she sort of went blank, like she was hypnotized, and just wobbled back and forth ever so slightly for about 8 seconds, then snapped out of it and said, "I don't remember that." Last night is when shit hit the fan. I haven't gotten a full night's sleep in over a week now. It's starting to make me feel over-emotional and crazy. Faye started murmuring in her sleep around 1, as usual. I couldn't understand much of it. She sat up in bed, took the sheets off her legs like she was gonna get up, but I grabbed her arm and asked what she was doing. She said, "Tell them to leave." Her eyes were completely shut. I asked her, Who? Who needs to leave?" She sat there for about 2 minutes, not speaking, just sitting straight up. I asked again and she replied, "There's a man at the door." Then about 10 seconds later, a woman at the bottom of the stairs. Of course, this made every single hair on my body bristle. I got up and went downstairs, turning on every single light as I went, carrying a buck knife with me. Nobody was in our house. I looked in every single room downstairs and even in the backyard. When I got back to the stairwell, I heard someone stomping around upstairs. Someone had turned off the light in the hallway. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, looking up, trying to listen, but the noises stopped. So I walked back up into our bedroom and got into bed. It was likely that Faye had gotten up to go to the bathroom or sleptwalked through the room, and went back to bed. I fell asleep pretty fast, but was woken up again a few minutes later. Faye was gone. I heard movement down the hall, so I looked out into it, and I saw Faye coming out of the other bedroom. She staggered down the hall towards me, then stopped, turned around, and walked back in the other direction. She did this 7 or 8 times. She was walking in almost the same way as the night before, standing up really high on her toes, her legs totally rigid like they were made of cement, her arms completely limp, flopping back and forth. It was extremely fucking terrifying seeing her move like that. She was totally graceless. It was like someone was testing out a human body for the first time. At that same moment, I heard a noise through the bedroom window and ran over to check, thinking someone was really at the front door. You can see down to the front entryway from our bedroom window. Off in the distance, about 30 yards out, somebody was walking back and forth in the exact same way Faye was. He was humming loudly and intermittently singing. The song sounded like the one that I sang to Faye earlier, the one the child sang outside the cabin. I made this video explaining what happened. Basically, I ran back into the hall and woke Faye up. I brought her downstairs and I opened up the front door to get a better look at the man, but he was gone. Today, at the behest of a few Redditors, I asked Faye if she'd ever been to the cabin before we visited. I don't know why I never thought of this before. She said nothing about it when we stayed there for several nights. She was hesitant to answer me, and eventually admitted that she went out there once when she was 14. Her and her parents went snowshoeing up the mountain. A few hours later, I emailed her mother and asked her the same question. She told me Faye had gone to the cabin multiple times as a child, but stopped going when she went to high school. I can't figure out which one of them is lying to me. Because so many people have questions about Faye, she's agreed to do a filmed interview. If you post questions for her, I'll film her responses and post it in a few days. I haven't told Faye this, but I'm thinking about going back to the cabin and meeting with the ranger. He wants to do some ritual with the dream catcher that we found, if it's still there. And he says he'll bring his friends to try to clean the house and the surrounding area. This will cost me like $500 to fly out there, but if shit gets any worse, it might be worth it. A Redditor sent me a private message telling me to investigate the guest room to see if Faye was doing anything in there. Turns out, she was. She had written the number 5 on the window with her finger. I only saw it because the condensation in this cold afternoon. It's written backwards too, so that someone standing in our backyard could read it. I can't tell you how much all of your support has meant to us over the past few days. Faye feels so good knowing that people are constantly asking about her health, and I feel that a few of your suggestions have literally saved her life. So, thank you, from the bottom of my heart. I don't even know where to begin. So much has happened over the last 2.5 days. The sedatives, the anti-anxiety meds that the doctor gave to Faye worked during the day. She's been less stressed. However, at night, her behavior is highly unusual. I have taken the overwhelming consensus of Redditors seriously. I went out and I purchased a bunch of child-proofing materials for the house to prevent Faye from harming herself, or going outside while she's sleepwalking. I can't afford a bunch of cameras. I'm sorry, I'm a teacher. I bought doorknob covers that little kids and hopefully sleepwalkers are too stupid to figure out. Outlet covers in case she tries to jam anything into them. I hid the kitchen knives, and I also brought in a spiritual healer after very carefully searching for one. It's in my opinion that 99% of them are frauds and hucksters, but this woman didn't charge us anything. She was recommended by a close family. She is the daughter of a Shoshone tribal healer. The long and the short of it is, she believes our house is not haunted. However, she says that Faye feels very off. She said that she couldn't get a good read on her at all, that there's this dark cloud over her. Still suspicious of the woman, I took her to a random window upstairs and told her that I had seen something near the edge of the woods, mimicking Faye sleepwalking, which was true, but I pointed out the wrong window, to the wrong part of the forest. She quietly examined the other windows upstairs and said that our bedroom window, the correct one, gave her a terrible feeling. She said he watches her from here. She can hear him whispering at night. We told her everything. She was horrified by our story. The look on her face unsettled me so much, it was like she'd never heard anything this bad. She went out of the room and had to collect herself downstairs. The woman prayed for several minutes and sang a beautiful song in a language I couldn't even begin to describe. Then she saged our house. She put some kind of crushed herb on the ground in front of the 2 doors that led into our home. And then she told me, in private, "You are dealing with the Hollow Ones." She said its name in her ancestral language, but I couldn't even come close to remembering it or spelling it. She said that one is infatuated with Faye and will do absolutely anything to get inside our house. But the process takes time. I don't know if I actually buy any of this, but at least she didn't sell it to me. We also had Faye take a pregnancy test as a recommendation by many Redditors. The woman said it was a good idea. Good news, not pregnant. And the woman stood in the bathroom with her like a prison guard so she couldn't fuck with the test. Then we thanked the woman and she left. That night, we attached a little jingle bell from Faye's Christmas-themed lingerie to a hair scrunchie and put it around her ankle. I'm such a light sleeper that there's no way she can get out of bed without waking me. Faye fell asleep really fast due to the meds, out like a light in a couple of minutes. I lay in bed thinking about the 5 she wrote on the window in her sleep a few nights earlier, and reasoned that it meant 5 a.m., and not 5 days, as some Redditor had speculated. This makes sense because she's been getting up at the same time to sleepwalk every night for 4 nights now. Since the 5 was written backwards, facing the backyard, I reasoned that it was a signal to who or whatever was standing out there. She was going to try to let them inside. I eventually fell asleep and I had a fucking horrifying dream. Something came into the house through the sliding glass door to the yard, and walked upstairs and into our bedroom and sat at the edge of our bed, rubbing Faye's foot and staring at us. It was completely wraithed in shadow. I couldn't even see it at all except for a silhouette, just like the video I posted about a few nights earlier. I woke up soaked in sweat and I couldn't fall back asleep for a while. 5 a.m. rolled around and the little jingle bell woke me right up. In her sleep, Faye did something that she'd never done before. She stood up on the bed, as rigid as a board, and stared out the window. Well, I shouldn't really say stared, because her eyes were closed, but she was alert, watching, listening. She remained like a statue for at least 5 minutes. I also didn't move. I just watched. Then, she slowly raised her hand and started waving at someone outside. My skin crawled when she did that. She definitely knew someone was there, even with her eyes shut. Faye then stepped off the bed and darted to the bedroom door, trying to get out into the hallway, but the child-proof knob cover stopped her. She couldn't figure it out in her sleep. She did another thing she's never done while sleepwalking. She got extremely angry and started pulling on the cover. She shrieked and growled like a trapped animal. After about 30 seconds of this, she woke herself up. She started crying really hard and told me that in her nightmares, she had seen a man without a face, walking through the halls of our home, whispering her name and looking for her. I sat up and talked with her for an hour, then we went back to sleep. I woke up again around 10 a.m., and Faye was gone. The bedroom window was open. As I walked downstairs, I saw her in the backyard, reading. Every single window in the house was open too, and it was like 55 degrees outside. She told me that the smell of sage made her nauseous and she wanted to get out of the house, but I couldn't smell anything. I suggested we go to a church downtown and speak with a priest. She's Catholic. But she refused, so I had my buddy Kay, who is very, very devout Catholic, come over with some holy water and his crucifix. Apparently Kay told his priest what was going on, and the guy reluctantly blessed the water and told us to call him. Faye was irritated that I'd done all this without her permission, and waited outside while Kay set up a few little crosses and his big crucifix around the house. Faye refused to put any holy water on her, saying, "I'm freezing, don't you dare." She's gonna be super pissed when she finds out I put that shit in her shampoo and conditioner bottles. She was in a really nasty mood all morning, but after we went out to lunch, she was feeling better and agreed to do a filmed interview with some questions from Redditors. While filming, I noticed that she wasn't wearing her engagement ring. I realized that she hadn't been wearing it in several days. I asked her where it was and she said it was in our luggage. We've now only just partially unpacked. Later, when I checked, it wasn't there. I'm worried about this for a few reasons. I'll post the video as soon as she watches it and approves it. She's self-conscious. Expect it within a few days. I finally begun moving some of our photos from the cabin onto my laptop too. I can't bring myself to listen to the voices on the recording yet. Since this is getting overlong, I'll flash forward to last night. I got up at about 1 a.m. to pee, and I knocked the bell scrunchie off the bed. Faye had taken it off and was gone. I got angry and scared at the same time. I found her sitting on the stairs looking down into the dark, spreading her arms open like she was trying to get a child to climb the staircase for its first time. She was smiling with her eyes closed. As I usually do, I got her up and walked her back into bed. Then I laid down next to her. She leaned over and with her eyes still closed said, "They're gonna kill you." And then she licked my face. I called her parents today to arrange a flight back to Colorado. They're paying for it. Her mom, Laura, admitted to me that something happened to Faye as a child at the cabin. That's where her sleep disturbances started, when she was 5. I've had enough, and they can tell. They spoke with the ranger at Pikes Peak again, and he's arranging to meet me with some of his friends from the tribe who knows the entire history of the area, and all of the hauntings that other visitors have reported. Faye will be staying with my 2 best friends, R, J, and J's fiancé, A. I've known all 3 of them since high school, and they're completely informed about the events. They will guard her with their lives. In short, I'm going back to the cabin, alone. I'll update soon, but no matter what happens, I'm not gonna drag this out any further on No Sleep. I've polluted this place enough with my problems. Edit. Folks, I won't be at the cabin alone. I'm meeting the ranger and his friends there. His 2 friends are from his tribe, nation, sorry, I don't know the correct terminology, and they're healers. They all know Pikes Peak and the ongoing situation. I'm not going out easy. Update. Dropped Faye off at my friend's place. They'll take care of her. Heading to the airport now, no idea when I'll get back on, if I'm not too tired after landing. Update 4:26, midnight, Colorado. I'm at Faye's parents, exhausted. Talked to her parents extensively. Got word from my friends. Faye started feeling really ill and wanted to go home. They've moved the whole posse over to our house, which has been saged, blessed, protected, and covered in holy water and crucifixes. She is allegedly doing much better now. Richard and Jason's fiancée Allison are all sleeping over a few nights to ensure Faye's alright. Heading to the cabin tomorrow morning to meet the ranger. Update 4:26, 9:45 a.m. Colorado. Leaving in 1 hour to go to the cabin. Sorry for the typo. I said the 27th on accident. Update. 4:26, 5:15 p.m. Spotty bullshit Wi-Fi. Snowing like crazy up here. Met with the ranger, investigated the cabin. Except a lampshade had been removed from a lamp, which he claims was not like that when they came in a few days ago. His friends will be here tomorrow morning. I'm alone for tonight. I went outside for just a minute when it was still light to grab some things from the truck, and I heard 2 voices. Making short videos on my phone. I'll try to upload. Update 4:27, 9:12 p.m. So much has gone down. I am terrified and sleep deprived. I'm writing a huge post now, and with everything that's happened, I'll post it tomorrow morning, because I know I can't finish it tonight. I'm going to fall asleep in my chair. Sorry to keep you waiting. It's been a really interesting few days. I have so much to say, so I'm gonna be terse. Sorry it's taken so long to report. I really am trying. All of your questions and analysis of these events have really helped us through this struggle. Some of your observations are what brought me back here to Colorado. I landed in Denver International Airport 2 nights ago and stayed with Faye's parents in Arvida. While there, we all sat down and I basically forced them to tell me what was going on. A Redditor pointed out that Laura, Faye's mom, appeared to be lying or hiding something. Another Redditor asked me if Faye had ever been to the cabin before. Since her family owned it for almost 3 decades, I never even thought of this. When I asked Faye, she said no, and her parents just used it for a getaway a couple times a year. Faye's mom told me she had been multiple times since she was little. This time, Faye's parents told me a different story. They claimed this was the truth. Faye had been to the cabin as a toddler a few times. When she was 5, something happened to her. While Greg, Faye's dad, and Faye were outside playing in the snow, Faye wandered off to the edge of the forest to look in. She was following a voice. Greg was building a snowman and keeping his eye on her. They were only a few dozen yards apart. Allegedly, Greg heard Faye talking and answering questions, but he couldn't hear anyone else talking. He started walking towards her to bring her back, and then he heard her say, "Faye, no, it's Faye. I can't see you." A moment later, little Faye began shrieking and crying. She went stiff as a board and Greg had to pick her up and haul her back inside. She was almost catatonic and would go through bouts of total silence or inconsolable hysterics for hours. Until Greg and Laura decided to go back down the mountain and take her to the hospital. Greg claims he never saw anyone in the woods and never heard anyone speaking to Faye. The doctor said she had an epileptic seizure and, to this day, Faye does not remember ever going to the cabin. When I took her, she acted like she was seeing it for the first time. I believe that if Faye did remember being traumatized as a child, she would never want to go back. So, I think she's really blocked out the whole experience. When we visited it a week ago, she thought it was her first time going. In Laura and Greg's subsequent visits, without Faye, Greg experienced terrible nightmares in which dead people entered the bedroom and sat on the ground and bed, watching him sleep. In the morning, Greg let me borrow his truck but refused to go to the cabin with me. He told me when I left, "We let you kids go up there because we honestly wanted to believe that there was nothing wrong with the place." They used us to validate their denial, but I don't hold them responsible. I'd have never believed that if I was them. Dreams and a frightened child do not a haunting make. I arrived in Pikes Peak around 1 p.m. yesterday, and the ranger met me at the cabin. We investigated the place and didn't find anything unusual, except for a single lampshade that had been removed from one of the lamps and placed on the couch. We checked all the nearby woods, and I was kind of surprised to discover that the creepy enormous dream catcher was still there. The ranger told me he did not recognize it, but it was something that his people made. He told me not to mess with it until his friends showed up, and he told me he'd return with them in the morning and left. That night, some shit happened. Greg told me that he'd hidden a .357 Magnum in the closet, so I retrieved it, and a really dope-ass purple bathrobe, and felt a little better. Don't worry, I know how to shoot and how to keep it safe. Right around sunset, I walked out to Greg's truck to grab a few things I neglected to bring in earlier, and I heard 2 distinct voices talking in the woods. It was snowing like crazy, and the wind was howling, but above the storm, I heard a gruff masculine voice and a younger adolescent male voice. They were both yammering incomprehensible gibberish from 2 different places. I hurried back inside and locked the door. The stuff they were saying was pure madness. It made no sense. Put them up in the trees. Up there in the trees. Ah, take and take. Walk on down there. Go ahead. I just sat there and imagined psychotic cannibals jabbering with their tongues hanging out and their eyes rolled back in their skulls. I figured they'd come out as soon as it was dark. I tried to reach out to Faye back home, but my phone wouldn't get any reception in the cabin. The storm was way too strong. I tried playing some video games on the SNES, but I was too distracted by the sounds outside. Every single noise the blizzard produced caught my ear. So, my imagination manifested all kinds of horrifying creatures slinking around out there in the dark. Finally, when I went to bed, the wind died down a bit, and I heard a few more voices. There was a distant, high-pitched voice that echoed across the entire mountain, and there was a child saying something like, "Put me down in the hole," and "It's so deep, you can crawl forever." But his voice sort of glitched. It suddenly became deeper, as though a grown man was doing an impression of a little kid. I also heard some kind of hacking, vomiting, and crying, begging for help. I didn't fall for any of it. I'm 28 years old, and this is the most afraid I've ever been in my entire life. Even with Faye walking around like a fleshy marionette calling out to the presence dark of our own home, around this time I was getting into bed, approximately 12:45 a.m., and there was a gentle tapping sound on the window in the living room. It was soft, like a neighbor who was reluctant to bother me. I stood there in the bedroom with the door open, holding my breath, trying to figure out if I'd imagined it. Then I heard it again. So I crept down the short hall and peeked around the corner, just in time to see a shadowy figure walk past the windows toward the front door. With the curtains drawn, I couldn't make out anything but a big shadow. Then it knocked on the door. It was a gentle knock. A man's voice called out softly, "Hello?" I just listened and tried to keep silent. Eventually he knocked again and said, "Hello? I need to speak with you." He was speaking through clenched teeth. He was either extremely cold or extremely angry. I carefully stepped back through the bedroom door to grab the gun, but this goddamn place is so old the doors creak. I barely tapped the bedroom door as I passed and it squealed like a dying pig. The man outside said, just above a whisper, "I know you're there." For a moment, in my lethargy, I considered the possibility that it was one of the ranger's friends, or maybe someone who lived on the mountain. I was never going to open the door, but stupidly, I figured talking to it couldn't hurt. I say it because I immediately stopped believing that this thing was a human being on the other side of the door, the moment I opened my mouth. I said, "Who the fuck is it?" as assertively as I could. The second I stopped talking, whoever was out there repeated my question, while mimicking my voice accurately. It almost sounded like an echo. Then he said, "May I come in? Please?" His voice sounded a little shaky, but it definitely sounded like me. Unnervingly similar to me. But he was still clenching his teeth, so I could hear a difference. I pointed a gun at the door. It was dark in the house, so he couldn't see what I was doing, even through the curtain. And I said, "If you don't get the fuck out of here right now, I'm gonna blow you in half." For those of you who don't know what a 357 can do to a person, a slug in the chest essentially makes you into a human milkshake, and that's after passing through 2 inches of oak door. We both just stood there for a dreadfully long minute, and then it started testing out my voice, groaning and whispering and muttering. It did say a lot of things, but I only remember a few of them.
"What's your name? What's your name?" "A little cabin for the weekend, for the weekend, for..."
And then a bunch of lip smacking and chewing noises.
"They're lying, they're lying. The ones are out there. La, 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 la."
Not singing, but just flailing his tongue around and making noises.
"You aren't alone in there. I'm not alone out here. What's your name? You go up in the trees or down in the hole. That's where you go. Oh, they'll find you. Either way."
The sound of my own voice making these horrific noises and phrases set every inch of my skin on fire. I can hardly describe the physical sensation of fright this intense. It's almost like having a bad fever. Hot, cold, and wet, sticky. At the same time, I shouted for it to leave. I said I was armed and I considered firing a round, but that's a decision you can't take back. My number one rule is that you only fire when you're certain you've got a target, and a clear reason. I was proud to say that I can use my voice a lot better than whatever mimicked me. I'm a soft-spoken guy, but I came down like a fucking hurricane and screamed, "I will fucking kill you." He replied simply, in a softer tone of my own voice,
"I will fucking kill you."
Then it went back to blabbing gibberish and politely knocking on the door over and over and over. After another minute or two, it suddenly stopped. The last thing it said was,
"I know where she is."
Then it kicked the door. I mean, harder than any human could possibly kick a door. And ran off. The boom was so loud, I couldn't believe the door didn't implode in its frame. The person thing bounded off the wood patio and into the snow. I swear on my life and honor, it sounded like a horse or some other four-legged animal charging off into the woods. A child's laughter rang out. Then, everything was silent. Needless to say, I remained in a cat-like state of delirious paranoia for the rest of the night. The storm picked back up and I didn't hear anything else. I spent the whole night debating whether the thing at the door was talking about Faye. I tried to convince myself that it was just yammering more nonsense like all the voices I've heard up here, but the way it spoke that sentence haunts me even now as I write this. Its voice, my voice, was purposeful and restrained. It chose its words carefully. It knew exactly what to say. I've been thinking a lot about what some Redditors had to say about Faye being a doppelganger. When I first saw the nude woman on my car, I thought it was a trick to lure me into the woods, where the voices lie. I thought the real Faye had stopped me from leaving the cabin, but many of you have pointed out that the reverse could be entirely possible, given how the Faye I took home to California is behaving, given how she failed all of my tests, and given how her engagement ring has been missing since we got home. So I sat there for hours, considering whether or not I should go out into the woods during the broad daylight to search for my fiancée. Of course it's a stupid idea, but now I understand why people in horror movies do idiotic things. If I'm not looking for her, or for answers, why am I here? I need to know what I saw that day in the driveway. I need to know if there's many voices or just one. I need to know how to get all of this back to normal. I listened to music on my iPod and desperately tried to distract myself by reading news articles online until daybreak. Most of them wouldn't load because the gods of the internet have cursed this cabin. Around 4 a.m. I got up to get some food from the kitchen, and I opened up the window curtain a tiny bit to see if anything was going on outside. A ton of snow had fallen, but at the rim of the forest, about a dozen yards out, I could see a distant figure standing perfectly still in the moonlight. He was facing away, staring off into the darkness of the woods. I checked on him every 20 minutes since then. He never moved, and when the sun rose around 6:15 a.m., he was gone. I never saw his face. Today, the ranger and 2 of his buddies came to the cabin, as promised. They were likable and warm. One of them, T-Way, is a medicine man in his 60s, and was especially cool. The other one was his son Nathan, who was probably just a few years older than me. They told me all kinds of interesting lore about Pikes Peak and the surrounding areas. Then they proceeded to tell me a disturbing story that they believe explains the strange activity on the mountain, and for the sake of brevity, I'll relay this in my next post. The ranger gave me one of his facility's satellite phones so I could stay in contact in case of an emergency. I used it to call Faye, but she still didn't answer, so I called Jason and Richard, who were presently caring for her. Apparently Faye had become inexplicably outraged after taking a shower. She threw an enormous tantrum and locked herself in the bedroom. She refused to eat the rest of the night. Allison and Jason slept in the guest room, and Richard slept on the couch downstairs. He worked late on his commissions. He's a digital artist. He told me that around 1 a.m., the same time I had my visitor, Faye ran downstairs into the kitchen, eyes closed, and started drinking out of the sink faucet. She turned around and stared, eyes still shut, at Richard while he sat at the breakfast table. She said, "Felix," which he replied, "He's in Colorado, remember, Faye?" Then she said, "We sent him there to die," and then sat down right there on the kitchen tiles and went back to sleep. I've instructed my friends only to wake Faye if she does anything serious, so they observed my rules and got her back into bed without much of an issue. For all the crazy shit Faye does when she's asleep, she's never gotten violent. The guys put her back into bed easily enough. The next day, Allison bailed on the whole project. She said that she was awake all night listening to Faye whispering through the walls. Faye told Allison that there was a man in the house, and he was asking about her. My flight home is the day after tomorrow, so I'm gonna have to figure all this shit out real quick. I'm gonna take a nap. It's nice and bright outside. No voices. Good night. P.S. As soon as I get home, I will put up the video with Faye in the interview. I know I keep saying this, but I really didn't expect to suddenly return to Colorado. I swear I'll put it up. And then, that will be the end of it. I resent myself for turning this into such a long and ridiculous blog post of my experiences. T-Way is an incredible storyteller. He told me that Pikes Peak and the surrounding areas was inhabited by the Ute, Manitou, Pueblo, and Anasazi, and other Native American groups at various times. In the 1860s, when the gold rush was in full swing, many Indians were violently displaced because of the mining operations here. They were torn apart from their sacred lands, which was catastrophic to their culture. T-Way stressed that, historically, Americans have not understood the significance of the land to Native Americans. And this is critical to understanding the supernatural presence on the mountain. The major world religions like Christianity, Hinduism, and Islam are universal. They can be practiced anywhere. You can pick up your whole life and move to Kentucky or Scotland or Istanbul, and you'll still be whatever religion you are. Your God still hears your prayers. He still intervenes in your life. But Native Americans practice land-based religions. The land they inhabit is part of their creation story. It's not that the land belongs to them, it's that they belong to the land. And both are in a symbiotic relationship with one another. History is embedded in the landscape. A person is reminded of specific lessons and wisdoms when they see the land. A mouth of a river has a story attached to it. That fallen tree has a story attached to it. A battle won here, a chief died there. Peace was made between the tribes with a feast here. When a native group is forced out of their homeland, they lose their history. And what's worse, they leave behind the places where their dead are buried. And since the dead are bound to that place, the Indians who left no longer have a spiritual connection to their ancestors, and thus to their gods. Their medicine and the magic no longer works. They forget the names of sacred places. As the names in history and wisdom are forgotten, the tribe's spiritual powers evaporate. T-Way said that when Pikes Peak was taken, a group of disgruntled Utes descended on the miners and slaughtered a bunch of them. Because of the complex network of alliances and peace treaties, the Utes were punished by another tribe. They dug holes in the ground and slit the Ute's throat, then buried them upside down in the holes with their legs sticking out of the ground so that the wolves would feast on their calves. That was supposed to be the end of it, but then something else happened. Legend says that those dead Utes arose from the tainted ground one night. Because the flesh was flayed from the hips down, they looked like walking skeletons. They hobbled into the Arifaro camps and took the women and children back up the mountain, then forced them deep into the mines, never to leave again. The howls of women and children have been reported on the mountain for over 100 years now. The Utes in Arifaro engaged in blood feuds, sometimes called mourning wars, for years over this. They exchanged curses, executed, skinned, and tortured each other. They stained the once sacred earth on Pikes Peak with rivers of blood. I was pretty mortified by the story. I just kind of sat there with the ranger while T-Way and Nathan blessed the cabin. They burned sage and tobacco inside and outside and then used crushed herb dust to cover their hands. They made a handprint on every window and drew small symbols and ash on the top of the door frames inside and outside. They gave me bundled sage, cedarwood, and hawthorn and told me to burn it if anyone tried to get inside. It drives the bad spirits insane. Then they provided me with small pouches filled with herbs and blessed objects to wear around my neck and in my pockets whenever I want to go outside. Nathan gave me a totem that he wears around his neck and told me to give it to Faye. Then they sang a really incredible chant in their language. It lasted about 15 minutes. I was blown away. I fucking love these guys. Then we went outside. I showed them the dream catcher. They told me that they've never seen anything like it. The dream catcher was made of 3 branches woven together with hair. It has old yarn or wool string with glass beads crisscrossing the center in the pattern. It's old and handmade. T-Way told me not to touch it or move it. If you find an object of power and don't know who made it or what it protects, you should leave it alone. I asked him if it could be evil, and he said, maybe. I got them up to speed on everything that's happened. I said that a lot of my friends, Redditors, but I didn't explain that, suspected that Faye at the house in California was a duplicate, and that the real Faye was somewhere out in the woods. T-Way and Nathan disagreed with each other on whether or not that could be, but we searched the woods looking for signs of Faye. We found nothing. I told them about the missing ring, and they said exactly what many Redditors have said. If Faye loved the ring, and it was powerfully symbolic to her, it could be used by a bad spirit to harm her. They told me to find it, at all costs. They also told me that if Faye were indeed still on the mountain, she was certainly dead. And the moment we've all been waiting for. T-Way named the creature that's been tormenting us. He said his people call it the imposter. Bad spirits inhabit the land everywhere, and sometimes they get the opportunity to use a tragedy, like the Pikes Peak Massacre, to commandeer a human figure and walk the earth partially mortal. And in the case of the imposter, they collect animal and human parts piecemeal, whatever they can, and stitch them together. That's why they walk strangely, vocalize strangely, and why they never show their faces or come out during the day. They can't pass for human. I asked T-Way why I always see someone facing away from me at the edge of the forest. He said it's because it doesn't want me to know his identity, but eventually the imposter would come for me, wearing Faye's skin, teeth, and hair, and try to convince me that it was her. I asked him what he want. He said nobody knows. He also told me that there's power in names, as many Redditors have stated, and that I should not speak its name, especially not to it, because it could provoke it. Of the voices I was hearing in the forest every night, T-Way said they practice what they hear for decades. It makes it easier for them to hunt. T-Way, Nathan, and the ranger left at sunset. I spent the rest of the evening thinking about all of this, and I think I've got a lot of things figured out. Around 9 p.m., something disturbing happened. I used the satellite phone the ranger gave me to call Faye. Surprisingly, she answered, and she was laying in bed reading. We had a great conversation. I told her how much I missed her, and that I was trying to solve what was happening. I told her I wanted to have a family with her. She said she was feeling better and had actually gone a whole night without sleepwalking or terrifying Jason and Richard. Those are my buddies who are looking after her while I'm in Colorado. After about 15 minutes of talking, I started hearing noises outside. I heard footsteps crunching in the dry snow. I heard a voice. My voice. It said things like flights, insomnia, I miss you, see you soon. The thing had been standing near the window, mimicking my conversation with Faye. I told Faye I'd call her back later and hung up the phone, then went silent. The thing kept wandering around the cabin trying to figure out if I'd moved, and it kept mumbling and repeating the last few phrases as it went. Finally, it came and knocked on the door. Its knock was gentle, just like last night. I was a little bit less scared because of all the blessings T-Way had put on the cabin, but I still held the gun just in case shit went down. He spoke to me in my own voice, and the first thing he said was,
"The hole will fill with snow and blood."
So, yeah, that amped up my fear quite a bit. Every hair on my neck bristled. You know the feeling of being so scared your vision turns hyper-real? Everything looks like a realistic video game, so everything looks just slightly off. Then it knocked again.
"Hello? May I come in?"
I simply said no, leave. Then it knocked for another 30 seconds or so, and then it said,
"What is your name? Hello?"
I lied and said, my name is Daniel, you can't come in. Then the thing started knocking harder, a lot harder, non-stop, and it kept saying,
"What is your name? What is your name?"
It was terrifying to hear my own voice come through the other side of the door. and to hear the rage building in the voice. I said again, "My name is Daniel," but the thing just kept yammering and asking the same questions. It would occasionally say things like, "Ticket, ticket, rental car. You go up in the trees. The hole, down in the hole. What is your name? May I know your name?" Then I had an idea. I'm really good with fake accents, and when I was a child, my first language was German. My dad immigrated to Boston and met my mom. I started speaking with a thick accent, talking about my day, then I started shouting in German. I recited a poem I know by Hermann Hesse, Die Frauen von Ravenna Trangen. My visitor went silent and kept knocking. I could tell it was just listening. So I started shouting in a British accent, reciting lines from V for Vendetta, my favorite film of all time. I shouted thank you in every language I knew. I once committed to learning it in 100 languages, but I stopped around 20. My unwanted guest just sort of stammered a bit, trying to mimic me, but failed to do so. I was no longer speaking in any recognizable pattern or tone. Eventually, it just started growling the sounds Faye and I heard in the forest when we first stayed at the cabin. Wachu, womai, and started scratching and pounding at the door. I grabbed the sage bundle and torched it with my lighter and then waved it all around the doorframe. I don't know if the thing could have smelled it, but it walked off the porch, pissed off and growling, and then went off into the night. This time, I ran to the window and tried to get a glimpse of it, but all I could see was a very dark, amorphous figure disappearing into the trees. I think I figured a lot of stuff out. I think the entity is trying to mimic me because it's going to try to convince Faye that it's me. It's rehearsing my voice and then whispering to Faye while she sleeps, talking to her in her dreams, trying to convince her to let it inside of our house. I think it wants to convince her that I am the imposter, not it. I think I also figured out why the voices go crazy at night, and why they're getting closer to my home. These fuckers aren't trying to scare me. They're trying to deprive me of sleep. If I'm psychologically and emotionally drained, I'm weaker. If I'm delirious, I'll make a mistake. Theirs, or his, attempt to get me will be a lot easier. I'm still trying to figure out how controlling Faye like a puppet in her sleep plays in all of this. I know what I saw. There was a man standing outside of our house, walking in the exact same creepy way Faye was sleepwalking, at the exact same time. I'm also considering the possibility that I made a terrible mistake, and that the imposter already won. When I went outside on the first night in the cabin with Faye, trying to see where the voices were coming from, I left the door unlocked. User and Franbutt said that was the moment that Faye was replaced by something else. I just don't know what to think. But for now, I'm going the fuck to sleep. Update, 4:30. Well, I found the ring. Update, 5/2. I'm out of the cabin and safe. Do not go to Pikes Peak looking to be your hero, looking to find mines, or looking for me. You will die. Avalanches, random gas, and mine collapse, etc. Do not be a fool. There are so many new developments, it's hard to figure out how to cram it all into a 3,000-word no-sleep post. The morning after I spoke with my fiancée Faye on the satellite phone, and then was visited by the thing that mimics our voices, I got a call from Richard and Jason. In case you don't remember, those are my two best friends. They're staying at my place taking care of Faye while I'm gone. They're the only people I trust. Richard stays up very late and sleeps in the morning, kind of like what I'm doing now. He does this for two reasons: to work on his art commissions, and to make sure Faye doesn't stab everyone to death and burn the house down in her sleep. The guys are reporting she behaved quite normally and feeling good being productive during the day. But then at night, she's unpredictable and weird. I feel like her soul is being cleaved in half. The two distinct sets of behavior are drifting further and further from each other each day. At around 1 a.m. that night, Richard heard the voice of a young child mumbling incoherently. He's up to speed on all the unusual events that have plagued me and my fiancée, so he immediately got up to investigate. He looked out the kitchen window, which faces the same part of the forest where I saw the man. mimicking Faye's sleepwalking movements. Richard didn't find anything, so he walked a circle around the house and then realized that the noise was coming from our bedroom window. He went inside and woke Jason up. They stood outside the bedroom door, listening. They claimed they heard the distinct voice of a child whispering and softly singing. I bet you can guess which song. Oh, soul me ado, I'm a naked soul, me I do. The same song Faye and I heard outside the cabin on our second night, sung in a child's voice. Both of these dudes are super ripped climbing enthusiasts, and they said they had never been more creeped out in their entire lives. Jason knocked on the door and said, "Faye, who's in there?" And he promptly heard a child go, "Shh," and whispered something inaudible. Richard pushed the door open and Faye was standing in the corner of the room, in the dark, facing a wall. She was standing up on her toes and dragging her hands and nails down the wall, talking to herself. With her back turned to the guy, she said, "Oh, their skin is so perfect. Which one? Which one? Put him down in the hole." Richard saw something out the window and hurried over to it. Jason stepped inside the room and reached out to put a hand on Faye's shoulder, but she whirled around quickly and covered her face with her hands. Her eyes were open, which is unusual for her when she sleepwalks. Then, and in these exact words Jason used, she started speaking in the voice of a little kid. She made whining and crying sounds, rocked back and forth on her feet, cradling her arms as though she held a child. Then she turned around and started scratching the walls again, still whispering in a kid's voice. She said things like, "It's Faye, I can't see you. Are you up in the trees or down in the hole?" And then she started singing again. Richard ran down the stairs and out the front door, barreling towards the tree line. From the window, he had seen a small child walking on its tippy toes, flailing its arms in the air. On the phone, he told me he could hear it singing while he watched it from the window. When Richard got about 20 yards from the kid, it took off running on the balls of its feet, heading straight towards the trees. Richard stayed in pursuit, but after it went into the woods, it got too dark to follow. He lost the kid after a few moments. He wandered around for a few minutes, searching the area, and eventually he heard the voice of an adult male. Rich says he walked a few steps deeper into the grove and he saw a huge man standing about 30 feet away, completely naked, looking up into the trees. He said there were lacerations and pockmarks all over his body. Now, Richard is about 6'1", 110, and bulky, muscular, and he said this dude was way bigger than him. He said the man stood perfectly still for a few seconds, then started rolling his head and cracking his neck loudly, and started making a gurgling, mumbling noise. I guess Rich was paralyzed with fear because he claims he stood there for an entire minute before running the hell back to the house. As he turned around to get out of there, the man let out a long, "Hello." As he did, the voice transformed. It became my voice. Rich said the thing was in the woods calling out for several minutes as he fled, wailing, "Please help me," and "They're gonna kill me tonight." Jason said that he did not hear or see anything out the window, only that Richard came running back inside, ghost white with terror. He said Richard actually cried. While they talked in the living room, Faye sat at the top of the stairs, just watching, wide awake, with a little smile on her face. The next morning, they took Faye to her psychiatric appointment, the first she's ever had, and I'll hopefully hear back on that soon. It kills me knowing I'm not with her right now. I'm still stuck at Pikes Peak. It's like this place doesn't want me to leave. The ranger stations shut down the entire network on the mountain because of a huge blizzard that rolled in. There are avalanche warnings. My road out here is completely iced over, and one part of it has a snow collapse mini avalanche. Shut up, I'm from California where God pays attention. And I'm in contact with the ranger. His name is Greg, just like Faye's dad. That's why I avoid referring to him by name in these updates. I missed my flight, but thankfully they gave me a voucher. Now I can just roll into the airport whenever I can. I have enough food to feed an army, and the electricity up here is surprisingly reliable, so I'm warm. The Wi-Fi dips out for 5 to 10 hours at a time though. I'm working on Donkey Kong Country 2 and The Secret of Mana on the SNES. I'm writing about my experiences here in my spare time. I also slipped on the icy porch steps and fell on my side. I've got an enormous bruise and it hurts like a bitch, but only when I breathe, so I got that going for me. User Sweet Rose Marie asked me if the cabin had a basement. I never thought to look. Outside, under the snowpack and halfway covered in old chopped wood, I found a locked door. The key was in the kitchen cupboard. It turns out there's a decent-sized cellar under the house. Down inside, I found a ton of creepy shit. There's a bundle of long black hair, several dozen jars of rotted, mutant-looking shit, tons of old books from the 60s and 70s, and lots of porno mags. There was also lots of sticks and yarn, all the materials necessary to make a dream catcher, like the one hanging at the tree line behind the cabin. I didn't touch anything, I just noped straight out of there. I've been thinking about something that user Wait Time Is Lame said to me the other day, which is, have you considered that the dream catcher is not a dream catcher at all? And he's right. I'm not an expert on Native American symbology or artifacts. It just looks like the kind of dream catcher to me. So I've been calling it one all this time. T-Way, the Pueblo friend of the ranger, didn't call it that. He said, just leave it alone. I'm wondering if that thing attracts the imposter instead of keeping it away. It could mark the house. I kind of want to move it for one night and see what happens. After all, T-Way blessed the entire cabin, so I feel quite safe. And I have a .357 Magnum in case leaves don't protect me. At about 9:30 a.m., there was a knock on the door. I grabbed the gun, suspecting another encounter with the imposter. It was lightly snowing and gloomy, so I figured the sun was blocked out enough that the creature would be willing to come out of the woods. But then I heard familiar voices, talking cheerfully. I looked out the window and, to my total surprise, it was T-Way and his son Nathan. These badass motherfuckers hiked up from the ranger station in the snow to check on me. I let them in and made them tea. I cannot tell you how happy I was to see them. T-Way brought me his own dream catcher. It was one he made specifically for me, and he told me I should hang it beside the creepy one. It was colorful and ornate. I could tell he spent a lot of time on it. It even had 2 beautiful hawk feathers dangling off of it, which Nathan says represents freedom and unboundedness. He reiterated the importance of finding the engagement ring Faye had lost, and then he blessed the house again. I tried to get them to stay longer, but they had to get back down the mountain before the snow picked up, and he told me I should come with him. We all knew that I wouldn't. If I did leave with them, I'd be leaving Greg's truck and I'd never find what I came back for. I said goodbye and T-Way hugged me. I wish this guy was my grandpa. I took a nap after they left. I figured how to sleep without being interrupted by the goddamn voices in the forest. From 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's pretty quiet outside, so I nap on and off. But something really bad happened this time. I woke up opening the bathroom window. I've never sleptwalked before in my entire life. Faye's been sleeping next to me for 5 years. She says I don't move, I don't speak, I don't snore, I don't even steal sheets. I'm one of the most polite bed buddies on earth. But when I came to, I was standing next to the toilet, both hands prying the frozen window open. It was about 2 inches up, and the freezing cold wind on my fingers is what woke me up. I slammed it and I checked all the other windows, ensuring that they were locked and sealed tight. Then I went back to bed, dragging one of the living room chairs into the bedroom with me, and propped it up against the door so that I'd knock it over if I got up again. This did not work. At around 1 p.m., I woke up standing in front of the front door. I found myself pulling it open. The loud groans it issued is what snapped me out of my stupor. I slammed the door shut and looked out the window next to it, praying there was nothing waiting for me at the tree line. I saw nothing. Then I remembered I had a dream. Images of a huge hole carved out of the mountain surfaced in my mind. Snow and branches were caked all around the mouth of the entrance, and an impossible yawning blackness emanated from within. In the dream, I just kind of stood there, gazing into the vacant face of the deep. listening to Faye's weakened cries. I sat down on the couch and just sort of cried for about a half an hour. I thought about what our lives had become, and how bad I missed her. I thought about all of our dreams we have for our future, all of the dreams that could never be if I don't figure out how to save her. I thought about all the promises I'll never keep if I die up here. I decided it would be best to hang the dream catcher sooner rather than later, because the clouds broke for a while and it was fantastically bright out. I got geared up and trudged across the snow with T-Way's gift and hugging on a branch about 3 feet away from the evil-looking one. And then that's when I saw it. Faye's engagement ring. It was dangling right there in front of me, as if to tease me. Someone had woven it into the strings of the dream catcher. I stood there for a long time, right between the two objects. I couldn't figure out if some benevolent force was giving me a break, or if I was being taunted by whatever beings have haunted my footsteps ever since I arrived on the mountain. Retrieving the ring would require me to not only touch, but destroy the creepy dream catcher. I had the thought to go ask No Sleep what I should do, but I feared that I left even for a second, the ring would be gone when I got back. So I tried to solve the riddle myself. I wish I had brought the satellite phone out here with me. After a few minutes of just standing there, I reasoned that T-Way's dreamcatcher would probably do just as well protecting me, if in fact that was the function of the original one. I also figured that if it were cursed or something, that touching it couldn't actually be worse than leaving the ring there, allowing Faye to be completely consumed by her madness. If the ring has anything to do with the creatures who are controlling Faye and me while we sleep, then getting it back to her is priority over not touching weird stuff in the woods. So, that's what I did. I broke the brittle thing apart and took the goddamn ring back. What else could I have done? As if on cue, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It was a person standing in the snow beside a tree about 20 feet to my left side. I was so scared I didn't look directly at him. I just watched him in my periphery and prayed that he hadn't noticed me. It was a man with black and gray hair and dark clothes facing away from me. His head was tilted all the way back, as if he was looking at the top of the trees. His limbs looked mangled and bent and elongated, even without looking directly at him. I slid the ring into my pocket as slowly as I could, trying not to make a sound. As I did, the man hobbled around to face me. I really didn't want to look now. I just slammed my eyes shut and knew he was looking at me. I could feel his gaze on me. He started gurgling and making throaty noises, then said in a voice so threatening, I can't even begin to describe.
Felix, I know you. Felix, I know you. Felix, I know you.
Over and over, and I just took off running and screaming like a bat out of hell. I screamed all the way back to the fucking cabin. I barricaded the front door with the couch and burned off half the sage I had left. I even prayed. Like, an actual prayer. I hadn't done that since I was like 15 years old. I'm really struggling to write this last part. It took me hours to finish this entry because I kept getting distracted. The ranger isn't answering the phone and nobody's at the station. Maybe the power is out. I don't know what I did, breaking up that dream catcher, and I don't know what tonight's going to be like. But Faye, if you ever read this, if something happens to me, don't forget, your tenderness, your softened skin, all I need. Your love is my tourniquet. I also have to say this, even though I desperately want it not to be true. The man that I saw was T-Way. Things have spiraled out of control up here on the mountain. I made a decision that changed everything. And it almost killed me. Only time will tell if it was the right choice to make, but for now, I'm just piecing everything together in my mind and trying to convince myself that I'm one step closer to solving all of this. I destroyed the strange dreamcatcher that has been dangling on a tree branch outside the cabin since Faye and I first came to this place. Nobody knows who made it, what its purpose is, or why it's on the side of the tree facing the woods, rather than the side of the tree facing the house. I found all of the supplies to make another one just like it, locked behind a cellar door that someone tried to hide years ago. But when I broke the dream catcher, I learned everything I needed to know. T-Way is dead. A lot of people have said otherwise, but I'm certain of this. I saw his likeness stretched over the gruesome form of a thing that stalks the woods. It was broad daylight, and the look on its mangled face told me exactly what I didn't want to accept. I really am all alone. Several Redditors have speculated that this thing only shows itself at night and faces away from me because it can't convincingly appear human, not without the help of the recently dead. T-Way confirmed this on his first visit to the cabin, but when I destroyed the dream catcher, there it was, proudly masquerading in the skin and hair of my best friend that was on this mountain, in the sunlight no less. I can't even imagine how his son Nathan must feel, if he's still alive. The two hiked back to the ranger station from the cabin, knowing the blizzard was coming. I'm sure that's when T-Way died. When I got back inside the cabin, I completely lost it. I barricaded the doors and windows with every piece of furniture I could, but there just isn't enough stuff inside the cabin to protect me. So I sat there, on the floor against the bed, clutching the gun, sort of wishing that my dark visitor would just come kill me already. But, of course, this is Pikes Peak. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you here. So, the mountain kept fucking with me. It was getting dark, and I was on the verge of a total psychological break. I'd been running on 4 hours of sleep per night and a few naps for the past few weeks. My only hope of redemption just got turned into a puppet. And I was about to find out what happens come nightfall when the dreamcatcher no longer functions. So I did what my brain decided was the best course of action at this point: to fall asleep. Somehow I nodded off. In fact, my brain just did a hard reset, because nothing about that sleep was restful. I just kind of went into a fear coma the minute the sun dipped behind the mountain. And then I woke up. I was in bed with the sheets pulled over me. The lights were off. All of them. And my hands were empty, when before they held Greg's .357 Magnum. When I opened my eyes, I suppose it's possible that I climbed into bed myself. After all, I caught myself sleepwalking twice the night before, but it took me a solid minute before I realized that there was a fucking arm wrapped around my chest. I didn't have the reaction you'd expect. Most people would fly out of bed screaming bloody murder, but my first thought was, where am I? My parents divorced when I was 3, so as a kid I'd spend a few nights a week at my dad's house and a few nights at my mom's house. Sometimes I'd wake up in the dark, not sure which bedroom I was in. It took me a second to remember where I was. Then the thought crossed my delirious mind. Maybe I was back home in California. Maybe I was at Faye's parents' house in Arvida. I sort of rolled out from under the arm and tried to figure out who the hell was laying in bed with me. I'd been sleeping with the lights on the past few nights, and I'd never in my right mind would have turned them off after seeing the creature so close to me just a few hours ago. The body in bed beside me felt familiar. Its warmth, its texture. I was pretty sure it was Faye, but I still couldn't remember if she was really up here. Then she spoke. She reached out through the dark and touched my face and said, "What's wrong, Pop-Tart?" Yes, that's actually the nickname she gave me. Love me some s'mores Pop-Tarts. I wasn't really afraid, just overwhelmed with confusion. I asked her where we were and why the lights were off. She just squeezed my shoulder and said, "Honey, we're in Pikes Peak. There's a storm. The power's out. It's done this before. What's wrong with you?" I got up out of bed. A feeling of dread was falling over me, heavier and heavier, the more awake I became. As soon as the sheets were off me, I felt a blistering cold. Colder than it's ever been in the cabin. The heat must have been off for hours. Only a bit of pale moonlight filtered through the windows, and it was barely enough to outline the objects that were in the room. I stumbled around looking for the flashlight, totally unable to remember where it was. Then said, "Why the fuck is it so cold? Did you screw with the heat?" Faye tried to get me to come back to bed. She told me it went off and came back on earlier and that it would probably be back soon. Everything about her felt wrong. Her voice was perfectly clear. Her skin felt recognizable. I just couldn't shake the strange feeling that I had. I left the bedroom and walked out into the living room. It was even colder out there. I felt my way around with my hands and noticed a strong, icy draft coming from down the hall. It's a straight shot from the living room to the bathroom at the other end of the hall. From where I could see the bathroom window. It was wide open. A big 2-foot by 2-foot gap leading out to the snow. I went to shout, "What the fuck did you?" But Faye stepped out of the bedroom and stood between the hallway between me and the bathroom. She said something like, "Felix, you aren't feeling well. Do you not remember what's going on? You're sick." I almost believed her. I definitely felt dizzy and feverish, but it could have also been a mixture of disturbed confusion and the freezing cold. The thought that this wasn't really Faye invaded my mind, and I immediately regretted not knowing where the gun was. The only words I could find were, "Who are you?" and "Why are you here?" Faye just stood there in the darkness of the hallway. The only thing I could see was a little silver outline of her figure. Her face was entirely black. Even though her eyes were hidden, I could feel them burning into me, just as T-Way's had when I had found the ring. I felt like we stood in the eye of a hurricane. Everything was totally calm, but I knew all hell was about to break loose. There wasn't a single noise outside. No branches snapped, no snow crunched, no voices moaned. It was as if time had completely stopped. Faye didn't move, even as she spoke. She held herself with the stillness of death. She said, "Felix." It wasn't going to get my attention. I wasn't too convinced that she was my real fiancé. It was a threat. She was reminding me that she knew my name. I still don't fully understand the power in names, but T-Way and Nathan believed it, and many Redditors warned me about it. When she said my name, I felt smaller than her, even though I almost stood a foot over her head. "Do you remember the 5? She said. She still didn't move an inch. Not even her hair kicked up in the drafts that blew in from behind her. "I can't remember. Not in this place." I didn't know how to respond to this. I didn't know what she was talking about. All I could say was, "Get out! You're not welcome here!" Again, Faye didn't move, but she did clear her throat, and the sound she made was about 2 octaves deeper than the real Faye's voice. She exhaled sharply and said, "Tell me about the number 5. And that's when I knew. I remembered where I was, what day it was, and exactly what happened up until this point. My visitor had finally come to call, and it no longer needed to be invited. I deeply regretted breaking the dream catcher. My hand instinctively slid over my pocket, and, to my relief, the little shape of Faye's engagement ring pushed back against my fingers. There was nothing else to do. I decided to throw down the gauntlet. I figured it was probably time to die anyway, so I might as well go out bravely. I just said, "I don't know who you are, and you will never be Faye." She took a menacing step towards me. A gurgle seeped out of her throat. She inhaled again, more slowly this time, but demanded, "I want to know about the number 5. Tell me, Felix." I looked all around me on the counters for a weapon, but found nothing. The knife block was on the other side of a short wall that divided the living room and the kitchen. There was only a roll of paper towels in reach, but in retrospect, I was so amped up with terror, I probably could have beat her ass to death with it. "I don't have a clue what that number means," I said. "In fact, about 5,000 people online don't either. Nobody knows. Only Faye knows." My visitor started shaking with rage. Her face was wreathed in an impossible black. There was an endless abyss in that stung my eyes. But then I realized something. This creature, whatever it was, had access to Faye's mind for several hours every night. Maybe for many years. Maybe even since she first visited the cabin when she was 5 years old. In all that time, it still hasn't learned everything about her. It could never perfectly imitate her, because she kept something buried so deep in her subconscious that even this thing couldn't find it. Whatever the number 5 meant to Faye, that deep place where she kept the secret, she didn't even go there in her dreams. The next part was all a blur. I said something like, "You're the one who speaks to her in her sleep." The visitor kinda nodded. "You ask her things. She answers you. I hear everything she says." The visitor didn't react. Then I said, "You've asked her this question, just like you're asking me now. She always says, 'No, no, I can't tell you.'" The visitor took another step forward, dragging a hand across the wall, as Faye did many times in her sleepwalking fits. It raised up on the balls of its feet and twitched violently. It said to me, "I will make you tell me." It didn't even try to mimic my fiance's voice anymore. It sucked in huge breaths, trying to control its rage. There is a certain feeling you get when you're about to die, when you're in danger and you might die. Fear completely overwhelms your senses, compels you to flee, to fight, to save yourself, somehow. But past that point, when you know you're going to die, the fear becomes useless and disappears. This has happened to me only once before, when I was sucked into a riptide at the beach during an El Nino winter as a teenager. In that moment, I just wondered, will my body ever come back to shore? Will they ever know what happened to me? In this moment, my heart slowed down. I didn't feel cold anymore. I just stood there, ready to be mauled to death. I was satisfied in the knowledge that I wasn't giving the creature what it wanted, therefore blocked it from using that knowledge as a weapon against Faye. Whatever 5 meant, this thing needed to take full possession of my fiancé, and I wasn't going to let that happen. I laughed. I actually laughed and said, "Well, here's shit out of luck, buddy, because I don't know what the hell it means. Maybe you can tell me when you figure it out." The imposter laughed right back at me, in my voice, a perfect mimicry. Then it said, "Well then, we don't need you anymore." And it lunged at me. I have dodged a rabid German shepherd like I was a ninja, but this thing was so fast and strong it knocked the wind out of me. I toppled backwards and crash-landed on my shoulders on the tiles near the front door. It unleashed a barrage of blows to my face and neck. It raked my sweatshirt with its razor-like claws. I tried my best to defend myself, but it was so dark in the house I couldn't see almost anything. I managed to flail my way free of its grasp just for a second. I pulled myself up to my feet by grabbing the counter, and in doing so, my hand brushed against the little bundle of sage I'd been burning. The imposter was on me like lightning, grabbing me by the back of my neck and pulling me with the strength of a 250-pound man. I very ingloriously whirled around and smashed the sage bundle into the creature's face, burnt end first, and wrapped my other arm around its head. Faye's familiar locks tangled in my fingers. I pulled its head forward and jammed the brittle sage into its eyes as hard as I could, screaming like a banshee. It shrieked and growled in some unhuman language and tried to push me away, but I held on as hard as I could and kept driving my fingers into its eyes, crushing the twigs in them. A memory of Nathan and T-Way's chant surfaced in my mind. I shouted the only part I could pronounce, "Tanaki Adden, Tanaki Adden, Tanaki Adden." Who knows if I'm even remotely saying that correctly. My hand slid over its eyes and the mockery of Faye's appearance fell off. I couldn't see in the dark, but the face no longer resembled my fiance's. The mouth was far too big for a human's, and its wet lips traced across the maw of 100 fangs. And then, that's it. The bastard had had enough. It screamed and growled and took off on all fours. Its limbs elongated as it moved further and further away from me. Its shape recognizably inhuman even in the pale light. It barreled up the bathroom wall and out the window, and in moments, it was completely gone. I am definitely not afraid to cry. I do it at funerals, weddings, and during the Hunchback of Notre Dame. But I am a little embarrassed to admit how long and how hard I cried after that creature left the cabin. I have never felt so utterly, miserably alone in my entire life. I only stopped when the power came back on, probably 20 minutes later. The heater kicked on and I instantly ran over and shut and locked the bathroom window. My sat phone was gone, the gun was gone, probably outside in the snow, or up in a tree, or down in a hole. I peeked out the kitchen window and saw something lying on the porch right near the front door. When I cracked the door open just for a second, I saw that it was T-Way's dream catcher. It had been destroyed and placed in the front of the cabin, mocking me, or reminding me that I was unprotected. I checked the timer on the little battery clock in the kitchen and it read 12:15 a.m. I was going to have to spend another night in this godforsaken cabin. I vowed to myself that, at daybreak, no matter the conditions, I would take Greg's truck and get down the mountain, or die trying. I didn't care if I slid off a cliff face. I would never watch the sun go down in Colorado ever again. For a while, I actually considered leaving right then in the middle of the night. Many Redditors have reprimanded me for not doing this before, but I assure you, even in this situation, driving in the dark on that little icy road next to the 400-foot cliff is a complete nope situation. But the mountain had other plans for me. At one point, I risked sneaking outside to determine how deep the truck was buried, but as I approached, I saw the snow had been dug out around the front 2 tires and they were slashed to ribbons. All I could do was let out a grim laugh and trudge back inside. At least it was warm in there now. At around 1 a.m., the voices started up again. They arose from far off in the woods, several of them at once, groaning and screaming dark elegies into the night. It was all the same evil gibberish that I've heard 1,000 times before, but they slowly made their way up to the open field, and eventually to just outside the cabin. I lit the remaining pieces of sage and did a once-over on all the windows that weren't barricaded with furniture. I also donned the medicine pouches and the amulet that T-Way and Nathan had given me, hoping that they'd be similarly effective in protecting me. Then I remembered T-Way's useless dream catcher and imagined my crumpled corpse lying in the snow beside it. Outside the front door, I distinctly heard my own voice calling, "Faye, it's me, Felix. Let me in. Let me in." And from the window in the bathroom, my voice again. "Hi, sweetie. I miss you so much." It repeated a few other things I've said on the phone in conversations with her, and a few things I said to her while she was sleepwalking back at our home in California. There were footsteps on the roof, 2, maybe 3 pairs of feet, stomping all over the ceiling. Voices of crying children paired with them. I stood in the kitchen clutching a knife in the herbs, waiting for the end. The voices circled the cabin as though a handful of deranged lunatics were slowly marching around the perimeter, singing the songs of hell as they went. They begged for help, they laughed maniacally, they whispered and screamed and talked entirely to themselves, all at once. Their dim shadows passed the window curtains over and over. I heard glass breaking in the bedroom and then in the bathroom. The stomping on the roof grew louder, and the voices at the door grew more urgent. Someone began knocking on the door, and the others tapping on the living room window. They all started screaming, "Faye, Faye, let us in. Felix, are you there?" And then, as if heaven sent, a blinding white light illuminated the entire cabin from the outside. All of the window curtains at the front of the house lit up. The sounds of motors drowned out the hellish cries. Someone had driven up to the cabin. I heard doors opening and men calling out coherently. Footsteps on the roof thundered overhead to the back of the cabin, and the screams of the children drifted off into the woods out back, echoing as they withdrew. The ranger bashed on the front door, calling out my full name, instructing me to come outside. I looked out the window and I saw 5 men, some in uniforms, and the ranger. There was a humongous off-road snowplow, 2 snowmobiles, and a big truck. They'd come to save my life. When I went outside, I walked up and hugged the ranger. I didn't even grab my winter jacket. Then he informed me that they were getting everyone off the mountain because of a problem with the power grid. He said he'd feared that I would freeze to death. The ride down the mountain would have been the happiest of my life, except for the view. We snaked across slippery white roads, and even with the truck's high beams on, I could see the brightest stars I've ever witnessed. But beneath them, dangling in the trees, were dozens and dozens of human bodies. They swung by rope from their neck or feet, some of them flayed and missing parts. The ranger didn't appear to notice, and I kept my mouth shut. But as they passed overhead on our downward crawl, I could almost make out the frozen faces. Lifeless for years, maybe decades. Their black blood stained the trunks of the trees. I'm not sure if these were the spirits T-Way talked about, or if I've been experiencing temporary insanity. Not sure if I'll ever know who they were, but I'm guessing that if the ranger showed up any later, I would have become one of them. I will never forget the haunting image of passing underneath them. We arrived at the ranger station and remained there overnight. I slept on a cot in a room of about 15 people, all the locals from different places on the mountain. I asked the ranger if he'd heard from T-Way or Nathan. He said he hadn't. One of his men drove me straight to Denver International Airport. I boarded a plane without any luggage whatsoever. It didn't matter. I had the ring in my pocket, and I'll never need another jacket again, so long as I live. When I finally got home, Faye let me have it. She kept kissing me and yelling at me. I understood she was angry that I'd spent so much time trying to take control of this situation, treating her like a child and disregarding her feelings in my crusade to rescue her. She was upset that I consigned her to the care of my best friends without asking, but seemed to appreciate their help. Richard and Jason were very happy to leave the house and never look Faye in the eye again. Although they did have some good news for me. Faye hadn't sleptwalked or slept-talked or done anything out of the ordinary in over 24 hours. This corresponds with almost exactly when I retrieved the ring from the Dreamcatcher, and after an hour or so of reprimanding me for being a thick-headed idiot, Faye forgave me, and we laid in bed together and talked about everything. I apologized for the way I treated her and put the ring on her finger. She looked so relieved to have it back on. I swore I'd never screw up like that again, and we both slept a full night. No strange night terrors, no bad dreams, or no disturbances of any kind. And in the morning, yesterday morning, we had Faye's favorite, waffles. At about 11 a.m., I received a call. To my great relief, it was Nathan. I immediately passed the information to him about T-Way and what exactly happened after they left the cabin that day. He ignored my question and said very ominously, "Let me speak to the one who followed you home." I said something like, what? To which he replied, "The one that calls itself Faye." My fiancé and I had been sitting on the couch watching the most recent Game of Thrones, so I just sort of handed her the phone and said, "It's for you." She put the phone up to her ear and said, "Hello," then listened for about a minute. I could hear Nathan speaking, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. Suddenly, a volcano of black puke exploded from Faye's mouth. It absolutely covered the couch and the carpet and sent me jumping out of my skin in the process. Faye doubled over onto the floor like a rag doll, coughing and sputtering. I fell to my knees beside her, panicked, asking if she was all right. I picked up the phone and screamed at Nathan, demanding to know what he said to her. Nathan just said, "Please, Felix, listen," then proceeded to recite some sort of chant or incantation. A wave of syrupy vomit rushed up my throat and out my mouth, and, as with Faye, it was oily black. I actually am an emetophobe, so vomiting sends me into a state of near catatonia. But Faye made a quick recovery and was right there to nurse me back to my senses. Nathan spoke to me a bit more, and he explained what he had done. I'll get to that in a bit. Faye and I spent the rest of our day feeling queasy. Eventually, we went to urgent care across the road and got checked out. They gave us blood tests, checked our vitals, and sent us home, telling us that we had suffered minor food poisoning, but I know deep down it wasn't the damn waffles. Thankfully, for the past several hours, we've been feeling much better. I mentioned a while back that T-Way and Nathan had a disagreement over who the real Faye was, and whether it was even possible for a duplicate of my fiancé to exist. When they hiked down the mountain from the cabin a few days ago, they had to go up into the woods to avoid the snow collapses all over the road. Out there in the woods, they heard the crying of a woman and followed it to an old abandoned mine. Both of them knew that it was very likely a trick, but T-Way said that it was their duty to explore the possibility that Faye was alive somewhere on the mountain. The blizzard came on earlier than expected. They stood at the mouth of the mine listening to the begging of a young woman somewhere off in the dark. but concluded that the voice was too unusual to be human. T-Way and Nathan decided to bless the entrance of the mine, which could ward off its dark inhabitants, but their chanting enraged whoever lived in it. It came out of the tunnels and snatched T-Way. He screamed all the way down into the dark, and Nathan couldn't follow. He ran away terrified, but got lost in the blizzard. He wandered around for an hour fearing death, and eventually came upon the skinned body swinging from a low tree branch. It was so fresh that the blood hadn't yet fully frozen. Nathan knew that it was his father's corpse. Eventually, he found his way back home. He said that his father's voice guided him out of the squall. Nathan explained to me that the imposter's goal of taking over someone's mind was different from its penchant for killing people. These creatures hunt and kill at random, salvaging human parts they need to walk the earth as mortals for a short time. But their pleasure derives from conquering a person from within. Faye was one of the unlucky ones that are chosen in this way, and the imposter's fixation on her lasted for decades. After long enough, their continued presence in the body and mind leaves a stain on the victim's soul. This corruption necessitates a purge, hence the barf party we held in the living room, whose stains I have thus failed to banish. Nathan invited me to the funeral service for T-Way. I sadly declined. I'm already on the verge of losing my job and flat broke from the experience, but I promised I'd honor his memory in my own way. I can't go back to that place. Fortunately, Nathan was understanding and promised that we would meet again soon. I'm still thinking about all this. I don't yet have all the pieces to the puzzle. If you're looking for the answers, you're gonna have to help me find them. But I think I have part of this figured out. The imposter gave Faye's ring back to me. They wanted me to destroy the Dreamcatcher. The ring was an object of great sentimental value, both to Faye and our relationship. The creature used it to invade Faye's mind and control her thoughts. Its goal was to convince her that it was me, so she would welcome it into our home late at night. The home, Nathan said, symbolically represents the body, just as the ring represents our union. To be welcomed into the home is to be granted access to Faye. Because the imposter could never learn everything it needed to from Faye to mimic me, it gave up on that project and instead came after me. It returned the ring to me, thus giving up the power it had over Faye. But I broke the Dreamcatcher to retrieve it. As it turns out, that creepy, mysterious Dreamcatcher was in fact protecting the cabin and everyone inside of it, which is why the imposter needed to be invited in. When I broke it, the creature could have easily came in and killed me, but it needed information from me before it did. It needed to know one of Faye's darkest secrets to rule her. I'm not sure if I'll ever unravel the mystery of the number 5, but I do know one thing. Not knowing what it means actually saved Faye's life. I'm not sure I ever want to know. As for Faye, she's back to normal and in perfect health. She sleeps soundly and only mumbles a little bit, which is pretty normal for her. Her sixth sense of humor has returned as well. Last night when we went to sleep, she turned out the lights and she said to me, "Thank you for trying so hard." Then she leaned over and licked my face.
Okay, so you're looking at the view from outside my front door. There is a tree line that runs between my neighborhood and the one behind it, and if you follow it all the way down, there's a forest and a cliff. Sometimes kids will go play in that forest. I've hiked over there before, but last night I woke up to Faye kind of wandering back and forth in the upstairs hallway, and she was just sort of staggering on the balls of her feet, just, like on her tippy toes, walking back and forth. And at the same time, I could hear out our bedroom window, which is right there. Just with the window open, I could just faintly hear someone singing. And the song sounded familiar to the song, or similar to the song that we heard at the cabin, but I'm not sure if it was the same thing. But so I looked out the window, and I could see somebody walking back and forth right here, kind of walking in the same manner that Faye was walking, just right there at the tree line, in front of the trees. And he was, I mean, I couldn't see what kind of clothes he was wearing or what he looked like because the lights that were illuminating him were coming from the houses behind that tree line. So they were just sort of creating a silhouette of him. And so I stood up there looking for a minute, and then I woke Faye up and came downstairs, and I came out our front door and stood right here where I'm standing now, and he was gone. But it was just really disturbing to me that he was behaving in the same way that Faye was at the same time, and then was gone when I woke her up. Making Faye some breakfast, and she is currently reading some of the Reddit updates that I've made. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, this is what happens when I cook and talk to Faye at the same time. This is your fault. I'm considering this your fault.
Sorry.
So what kind of questions are they asking you?
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah? Is it creepy? Can I ask you something?
Can we wait till I put a bra on?
Okay, sorry. Is it weird that so many people are interested in you and your well-being and all of your weird sleep problems?
I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird to look at this and see how many people are commenting. I'm okay, guys.
Yeah. Good.
You can just put it up there.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Can you just go ahead and talk for a second, just so that I can see if it records your voice?
Cookie crisp.
You're the best. You're so pretty. Look at you. Yeah, yes, that's what made me fall in love with you. It was that. Okay. All right. You ready for your close-up? Faye is now wearing a bra and prepared for her interview. Okay. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
All right. So, how are you feeling?
I'm fine.
Yeah. Are you having any weird dreams lately, or I mean, you just kind of went through something that was.
Yeah. I haven't been able to remember my dreams as of late, but I don't know what you want me to say.
Yeah, that's okay. I don't really remember my dreams that often anyway, unless they're really bad nightmares.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I've been hearing the creepy shit I've been doing, but
Yeah.
I don't remember. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that's okay. It's funny. An insomniac being in a relationship with a sleepwalker, because I'm there for everything you do always and never sleep through it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Tell them the story about the snake under the bed. Or maybe I should tell them because you were sleeping.
Yeah, I don't know if because like, the thing about, like, when I have night terrors, I don't remember all of it, but sometimes I come to,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like in the process of waking up, and it's like my dream popped out of my head into the room. So, like, things that you shouldn't be able to see in a dark room, like, I could see. So I do remember the tail end of the like,
Right.
I remember seeing that snake under there. Like, every single time I have a night terror, it doesn't matter how many times I have them, I'm 120% convinced that it's there. So, like,
Yeah.
there was a snake under that bed.
As I understand, you know, night terrors occur at like a different level of sleep, and they spill over into reality. So like, even though you're awake in that first 30 seconds, your brain is still projecting these like hallucinations into the room.
Well, and it feels that way too, because it's like I'm in the dream, and then it's like, it's almost, I can't explain. It's like my eyes are open and I can see the room come into place, but
Yeah.
the dream, part of the dream is still there.
That's really
Yeah.
creepy.
It's weird, yeah.
Well, then let me tell you about the snake dream, because this was at a point when was in basically a graduate program 2 years ago, right? And
I think that's about it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
and she was renting a room, and she just had a little like twin bed, so we couldn't actually sleep in it together. So we would switch off. One of us would sleep in her bed, and the other would sleep on this air mattress. And the reason that we had to switch off was because the air mattress was so bad that no one could sleep on it for more than one night in a row. Mm-hmm. So on this night, Faye was sleeping on the mattress on the ground, and in the middle of the night, I was still awake. I think I was watching a Netflix video or a movie or something, and your hand shot straight up in the air, straight up, and then you started snapping your finger in your sleep, and I was like, Faye, what the hell are you doing? And then you were like, shh, and you sat up in bed, and you're like, there's a snake under the bed, and you started pointing and snapping at it and just pointing at it, and I was like, Faye, there is no snake under that bed. So, but I actually checked.
I know, you always check, and it's funny, my ex from my previous relationship, I scared him several times too.
Yeah.
Like he was convinced there was something under our bed one time too.
Yeah.
So like.
Well, when you roll over and tell me there's someone in the house, you know, it's pretty scary. I imagine he. Okay, so there's another question here. There, yeah, I think that works. All right, these are some questions from Reddit. Let me get my computer open here. All right. Have you ever experienced anything that you would call paranormal before our little cabin trip last week, our romantic little outing up in Colorado?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily paranormal things, but things have just always seemed to happen in the homes I've lived in.
Yeah.
Like every home has a story. You know? Like, do you want me to tell you?
What's the one that when you were staying at your dad's place when your parents were like separated for a period of time?
Okay. Yeah, that is probably the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me.
How old were you?
Far. At that point, I think I was 17.
Okay.
And I was staying at my dad's house. They were both out of town because my grandfather was sick, so they were tending to him out in like Iowa.
Yeah.
So I was in the house by myself, and I had a lot of other experiences. It's funny, I've had experiences my whole life, but around that time of my age, like around that age, they got stronger, and things would happen almost every night. But it's like, as I grew older, more things happened. But, so anyways, I was in the bed, and I was still wide awake. This wasn't a night terror.
Right.
And I started hearing breathing. Really deep breathing. Like
wheezing? Yeah.
And I just got this picture in my head of this man, and he was so angry, like you could just feel the rage in him. And I was laying in the middle of the bed, and it's a water bed.
Yeah.
And I was so scared to move because I thought for sure he would get me, but he was walking around the perimeter of the bed, and we have it's a queen bed, so it's pretty big, but he was dragging a leg. You could hear like a leg dragging, and every once in a while like something would crack. So like, and he did this for like 20 minutes, and I was so terrified. I was not asleep. So I told my dad about it one night, and he was rather unsettled by it, but I'm like, there's something in your room, because there was a little child in my room at the time. I'm pretty sure he popped my mattress because he would fuck around with me in the middle of the night too.
Is this the same kid that would like flip your
He'd pull my hair, he'd run his fingers over my face. He wake me up a couple of times by banging the side of my mattress. Like I'd wake up and he'd be laughing. Like,
what about where your sheets would move?
Oh, there was a couple of times, yeah, where I'd be, and granted, this is why I'm awake.
Yeah.
Like, I was awake. Like, I turned my lights off for 5 minutes. So these are all things. Granted, the laughing happened as I was waking up. You know, that didn't just happen after I turned the lights off. But there were times when, I would go to bed and I'd pull my covers up like this, and then somebody would just kind of fold them over.
A little turn down service
Yeah.
for free.
Like, there you go. It's like, oh, thanks. I needed that.
Okay, let's flash forward to this past, the past couple of days and what happened to us at your parents' cabin.
Okay. I don't know how much help I'm going to be with that, but...
Do you remember your dreams this week? Do you remember when you sleepwalk? And this question refers to after we got home from the cabin when we're back here in the house.
Yeah, I've had a couple, disturbing dreams.
Yeah.
One in particular that comes to mind is I must have been sleepwalking because when I came to, I was standing up. But
yeah,
I just had a dream that this dark figure, I'm assuming it was a man, was like, we were in our house and I could just hear him whispering my name. And he was bumping around. He was searching in the dark,
Was he looking for you? What was he looking for?
Well, I assumed he was looking for me because he was whispering my name, mumbling and stuff. But I couldn't, when I couldn't see his face. But it was just terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, I got a bad, you know how you get a feeling like, even though you can't see the person or the face, like, that it's bad, it's ominous.
What do you think you've dreamed of maybe not this man or maybe this guy, but this entity, you've dreamed of this before. I mean, over the past couple of years, so like...
I do kind of dream about men a lot, don't I?
Yeah.
They tend to take different forms, though, because there was, like, that old man in the room, and then I've had dreams, like, when we were in the dorms up at school, I've dreamed that, that was a night terror. I woke up and he was actually in the room. I saw that, but, like...
Is this the man with the top hat?
Yeah, he was standing behind my boudoir, but he was so tall I could see him over the boudoir. And he was wearing a top hat, and he kind of looked like a scary Abraham Lincoln kind of thing, but he had these really long arms, and I couldn't see his face, but I knew he was staring at me.
It's funny because this, one of my favorite movies is The Babadook, and it came out, I think, like a year ago.
Yeah, this was like, when did we graduate? This was like at least 5 years ago.
We graduated in 2012,
yeah, so
but
it was
I think
like 6 years ago.
You had this dream in 2011 because that's when we were in the dorms together.
Yeah, so it was scary. But yeah, this one, I don't know, like, you know how when you have a dream, it doesn't always tell you, like, you just don't know. Sometimes you have a feeling. It was just a bad feeling, like I was really scared.
Do you remember when you sleepwalk? I mean, because this week you've done a couple of really weird things. Like, I have found you walking down the halls on the balls of your feet. I've never seen you do this before. I mean, you've sleptwalked in front of me before a lot, you're walking around like an animal. Or actually, no animals walk like that. I mean, you're walking around like a fucking alien.
I can't even imagine, like, I can't imagine myself doing that. But I don't have any recollection of that. Like, it's not, I feel like that's something different than a night terror, because when I have night terrors, I'll occasionally, like, see the tail end of it, I feel, but I don't remember.
So what's just so that Reddit can see, what is the thing that you always do in your sleep with your hand that I...
Well, I only know what you tell me.
Yeah. So. Can you do it? Can you do it for me? I think it's a self-soothing thing that you do, but you will lay on your back and you'll touch your face really gently for like 15-20 minutes at a time. and I'll put your hand down, like I'll very gently grab your hand and I'll put it down at your side, and you will lift your hand, you'll come back up and you'll touch your face again.
Weird. It's
But
probably why I break out right here.
it's funny though, because sometimes
Gross.
I will put your hand down and I'll touch your face, and that will stop you from doing it yourself. So it's really weird. Like, as long as somebody's playing with your hair or touching your face, you won't do anything weird in your sleep, or like rubbing your back or whatever. I think you need to just be touched,
Well, I do like back rubs, that's for sure. Hint, hint.
But the weird thing is that when you're sleepwalking, this week when you're walking around on your toes and you're like scratching the walls and like lifting up paintings and looking behind them and stuff, saying that there are windows, you're also touching your face and like doing your same self-soothing things that you do when you sleep. So it's like you're not afraid when you're doing this. Do you remember being scared when you wake up from, like, sometimes I get you back to bed without waking you up, but sometimes I do wake you up. Are you afraid when you wake up?
I think I'm more than anything just confused.
Yeah.
Because...
And then when you talk in your sleep, especially this week when you say really ominous, creepy stuff, do you remember, is someone telling you to say those things? Where are you getting the things that you say? You talk about them, you talk about him, you say they are looking for me, they want to know your name.
I don't know. Like...
Who are they?
Felix, I don't... I don't know. I'm sleeping, for Christ's sake. Yeah. I don't know.
Would you ever, if you did know, would you tell me?
Yeah.
You wouldn't hide it from me?
No. Why would I? Like, what do I have to hide?
I don't know. Okay, alright, I trust you. Alright, another question here. Did we talk about your first night terror that you remember? I don't think we did.
I don't think we did. We talked about the old guy.
Yeah. Okay, so what is the first night terror that you remember that you've ever had in your life?
Okay. It was in our first house.
Mm-hmm. In your parents' first house, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I think I was like 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. I woke up and we had mini blinds in my room, white mini blinds. And I remember the moon was shining in, so you could see like the silhouette of trees and like the leaves and stuff. You could see that it was a little bit windy out maybe because things were moving. And I remember just watching the trees sway back and forth. And then I saw this figure walk up to my window. It was a single-story house. Mm-hmm. And it looked like a man, but a big man.
Yeah.
And it just stood there. And then I remember kind of sitting up and like watching it. And it kind of did one of these motions.
This is out the window? You're looking out the window?
Yeah, but it's a mini blind, so I couldn't see anything. It's just like a shadow, because the moon was shining. And he did this motion. And I remember I kind of did one of these, like... And...
How old were you?
I told you I was like 5, 6. I don't know. It was probably a dream.
Yeah.
But, it had to have been a dream, because then he changed form.
What do you mean?
Well, but I know we're talking for these guys, but he changed into like something else. Like it wasn't a wolf, like, I mean, I guess maybe a werewolf type creature, but it wasn't human. And it was really big, and his arms just kind of stretched down lower, and he did the same motion one more time.
Oh,
and then after a moment or two, he walked away.
by the way, tell them what degree you have.
For school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Marine Biology.
with magna cum laude, right?
Yes.
And you also are certified in exotic animal training.
Yes, I'm a trainer.
And you're a zookeeper.
I'm an animal keeper.
Yeah.
Yes. I work with birds and cheetahs and primates. I worked with dolphins.
You had a 2,000-pound water buffalo.
Oh, mm-hmm.
And
he was my favorite.
Buff.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. The lion, you took care of a lion?
I did take care of a lion.
Yeah.
I've walked mountain lions. I've flown hawks on creances.
You've been attacked viciously.
I've swam with dolphins. Oh yeah, he almost took my eye out, that lovely hawk. It was during molting season. They're very aggressive during that time.
Me too.
Because it's very excessively, it's energetically very costly, and so he kind of turned into a dick.
Well, the reason that I bring this stuff up is because if you saw in this dream a man turn into something and you are at a loss of words to describe it or to compare it to an animal, that's pretty scary, in my opinion. I mean, you're the one person who should be able to say, what animal it looked like.
I mean, I guess I was really young.
Yeah.
So this is a very old memory, but I just know it wasn't. I mean, it was standing on 2 feet. It was like bipedal.
Right.
But its arms are almost long enough to where it could.
Yeah.
If it hunched over slightly, it could.
I know you've never played my favorite game, Fable, but what you're describing reminds me of a creature called a balverine, which is like a white werewolf with really long, creepy arms and big elbows. It's actually pretty disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was just the silhouette. I didn't actually see anything.
But you're describing to me what sounds like a dream or a nightmare, but the question that the Redditor asked was, do you remember your first actual night terror?
Oh, okay. Yes. I don't know if I want to tell this one. I always feel crazy. I've told you because I tell you everything, but it was in our second home. And I remember I was 8 or 9, and it was a Friday night. I remember because my parents rented a movie. That's when Blockbuster was around, guys. And
they don't remember that. These are all kids born in the 90s.
I know. There were times when you would buy or rent plastic cartridges with videotape in it, and you would put it in something called a VCR.
But you'd have to rewind it first because
I remember waking up and feeling angry. Angry. Like, not just angry, savage. That's really what I was. And it's like I couldn't control myself. And it's like I was up here. This is where I was. But I couldn't control my body. And I got out of bed, but I was like crawling like an animal. And I was so angry, and I was like growling. And I couldn't have been asleep for long because the movie was still playing. But I crawled down the hallway, and again, it was a 1-story house, but I crawled down the hallway in darkness like an animal. And I peeked around the corner, and I could see the movie playing. And I peeked around a little bit more, and I could see my family sitting on the couch. And I just had this uncanny, like, I wasn't in control of myself, but I just had this, like, need to attack my father. And it's like I was not in control of my body. I can't even imagine what would have happened if I actually did it. But I just wanted to like attack him, like bite his throat, like.
And he's like a badass war hero, right?
God.
But you were, yeah, you were.
Like, what the fuck?
I have to cut you off just because I don't want the battery is dying. The little red battery is flashing right now. So, I'm sorry, Noodle.
Okay, baby.
I love you. Thank you for answering these questions. I know it's kind of, and I'll charge this up and I'll ask you more about the cabin in a little bit. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Bye, Reddit.
Bye.
Okay. All right. We had to charge the battery because it died very quickly, which is kind of unusual. All right. So just a couple of last questions from Redditors.
Shoot.
Okay. Have you ever been to the cabin before?
No, that was the first time.
When you and I think it's been how many days has it been now? Like 5 or 4 since we left. So your parents have owned this cabin for like, 20 years almost, I think, since you were little. You've never been there before.
No.
Huh. But your mom, when I spoke with her, said that you had been to this cabin when you were 14. Why would she say that?
I can't even begin to know why she would say that, but I've never been there. So, I don't know. She's pulling a fast one. I don't know why she would tell you that.
You think she's lying?
She is, because I've never been there.
Hmm.
I just don't know why she would tell you that.
Hmm.
Are you sure she said that?
She said when you were 14, I think 13 or 14, she said that you were there, and then you stopped.
No.
You didn't want to go
no,
anymore?
because when I was 13, we had a trip to Florida.
Oh.
We went to Disney World.
So, you've told me before that they've, gone up there like in the winters after Christmas or whatever. Did you never go with them up there?
I've never been there before this last time.
Okay, so another question. In your personal opinion, what were the scariest parts of being at the cabin?
I mean,
Sorry,
it would have to be the voices. It was really scary hearing you tell me what I was doing, but there were things that I actually did hear,
Yeah.
and there were voices outside. I mean, this cabin is out in the middle of nowhere, and I would wake up and hear people talking.
Who did you hear talking?
At first, it was just voices, a man, a woman, and then the voices changed. I heard my grandfather's voice. I heard him out there.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us the story of you hearing his voice? What happened?
He was out there and he was asking. I'm sorry. He was out there and he was asking for help.
Do you want me to shut it off?
No, it's okay. It's just my grandfather has been dead for years. I mean, I never got to say goodbye. And it was during finals, so I never got to go to his funeral, but he was out there and he was lost. He was asking for help.
It's okay. You want me to stop? We don't have to. Okay, I'll shut it off.
Okay.
You can stop if you want.
Okay, I'm all right now.
Well, what else? You don't have to talk about him anymore. But he did, for the record, in case anybody hasn't seen it or read the story, he passed away when we were seniors, the beginning of senior year. Faye and I became friends in our junior year of college, and we were just friends until the very beginning of senior year. Yeah. I knew right when I first met you. Sorry, the camera shut off. It keeps shutting off. I was like, when your roommate opened the door, or no, you opened the door. I was looking for your roommate.
I opened the door.
Yeah. But okay, I never met your grandpa. So when you were saying in the cabin that you were hearing his voice, I mean, I heard a voice calling for help. And at first I didn't believe you that you were hearing him. Mm-hmm. But since I've never met him before, I can't say whether or not it was really him, but you seem pretty certain that it was him. But then I heard my mom's voice, and my mom is from Boston, and she has an unmistakable Bostonian accent, and she has that ridiculous laugh. And she's always saying, you know, she's always like shouting at people like Bostonians do.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we both heard her.
And you can corroborate that this was her voice, right?
Yes, I mean, that's the weird thing is like we were out in the middle of nowhere.
But
with the snow, it's difficult.
Do you remember the song that the little kid was singing in the forest on the, I think it was the second or the first or the second night?
I don't remember. I mean, I remember the singing, but I don't remember like what it was.
I remember the song because I can't get it out of my head, but you can't remember it?
No.
Could you try singing it?
No.
The song he was making sounded like "So mi adu, so mi adu." You remember this? So mi adu. So mi. I don't remember any other parts of it. Yeah. What he said also, like, "I'm a naked soul, so mi adu." You don't remember that? That's all the questions that I thought were important to ask, but just for the record too, you told me, I noticed that since we've been home, you haven't been wearing your ring. Do you know, you told me your ring, you told me that your ring was in the suitcase, but I looked and it's not there.
Oh, I'm not really worried about that, sweetie. That luggage has like a million little pockets.
Yeah, I know what you've hidden in there.
I know you do.
You're sure? Okay. All right, okay. Well, thanks for doing this interview. I hope people find it interesting. Okay, bye Faye. Bye for now.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to this amazing story. Make sure you go check out Felix Blackwell's Facebook page. That'll be linked in the description. Maybe go buy his book. And maybe even you should prepare yourself for the sequel to this. Big thank you to Felix Blackwell for letting me narrate the story. I hope I did it justice. Make sure you guys share it around and let me know what you think in the comments.